Good evening, everyone. Welcome to City Hall. I'm Lisa Bender. I'm the president of the Minneapolis City Council. I'm going to call to order this adjourned meeting of the City Council and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Jenkins. Here. Schrader.
Here.
Rasami is absent. Cunningham is absent. Ellison is absent. Goodman.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Palmisano.
Present.
Gordon is absent. Cano is absent. Reich.
Here.
Fletcher.
Here.
President Bender.
Here.
There are 8 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. I imagine a number of colleagues will be joining us, but I wanted to get us started on time out of respect for all of you who came to speak today. The agenda is before us, and I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. That carries, and the agenda is adopted. Let the record reflect we've been joined by Councilmembers Warsami and Mayor Fry. Welcome. All right, so on August 15th, so I'm going to give a little introduction to what we're about to do tonight. I'm going to be brief so that we have as much time as possible for everyone to speak. On August 15th, Mayor Fry presented his recommended 2020 budget, providing a proposed fiscal plan for the city's operations next year that totals $1.62 billion with a property tax levy of about 6.95%. A copy of the mayor's recommended budget is posted to the city's website, and a full printed copy is available for public use with the city clerk, who's sitting over there by the clock. Since that time, the City Council, but through its budget committee chaired by Councilmember Palmisano, has conducted a series of hearings to examine the details of each department's budget requests. Actually, those were meetings of the council's committee, the budget committee. The budget committee also conducted the first of 3 public hearings on the proposed budget on November 7th. All of those meetings and hearings have been broadcast on the public access television from the city website, as is tonight's meeting, and those are still available on the city's website. So tonight's hearing is the second of 3 hearings that the city will conduct on the proposed 2020 budget. That satisfies the statutory requirement for a truth and taxation hearing. A little over 2 weeks ago, Hennepin County mailed out proposed property tax notices which identified the potential property tax impact based on the proposed 2020 budget. And as required by state law, tonight's hearing provides the community an opportunity to comment on that proposed budget, in part based on information that was included in the property tax notice from Hennepin County, as well as all the information that's been made available by the city. Before I open the hearing, I'd like to let you know that we'll be taking speakers in the order that they're registered. If you want to address the council as part of tonight's hearing and haven't already signed in, I would encourage you to do so now. And that sign-in table is in the hallway just outside the chamber here. We have overflow seating in room 319, which is located across the hallway for anyone who'd like to sit down if there isn't enough space in this room. And then a live broadcast of this hearing is also available in that space, so you can watch on TV from the other room. Also, we have arranged for translation assistance in room 319 for anyone who needs that assistance. For those who wish to add their comments to the public record but do not want to speak today as part of this hearing, there are comment forms available at the registration table in the hallway outside, and we encourage you to make use of those forms or, of course, contact your city council member. You may also submit comments about the proposed budget using the web form on the city's budget website. If you have materials to submit today as part of the public record of this hearing, you can submit those to the clerk again at the end of the dais. So before we open the floor to public comment, I'll recognize our budget director, Micah Intermill, and he will provide a very brief overview of the proposed budget.
Members, thank you again. For the record, my name is Micah Intermill, the city's budget director. As a reminder, the mayor has proposed a budget for the city only, excluding our independent boards, of approximately $1.62 billion. That budget is structurally balanced in 2020 and all planning years. The $1.62 billion represents approximately 3.5% increase to that overall city budget from 2019, and of course includes the general fund, the city's enterprise and internal service special revenue funds as well. As the council president mentioned, the levy increase associated with the mayor's recommended budget is 6.95% increase from the amount collected in 2019. And that's distributed across 8 different levies that the city and associated independent boards collect from property taxpayers. With respect to the content of this city budget, as the council president said, we've had lots of discussion from all of the individual departments, but in sum, I think the major pillars of this budget include an affordable housing investment of over $30 million from local sources, an interdisciplinary approach to public safety, including investments in the police department, the health department, city attorney, fire, and others, investments in economic inclusion, including the creation of cultural districts, expansion of the city's small business team, and direct outreach to different communities of color, and improved city operations, including additional funding for our elections in 2020. As we know, we'll have 4 of those, including a special election, modernizing some of our core IT infrastructure and adding some other operational investments that don't necessarily get as much public discussion as some of the others. As a reminder, each property tax dollar goes about a quarter to general services, a quarter to the police department, about 20% to the parks, 16% to capital projects and debt, 10% to fire, 6% to public works, and 3% to pensions. You know, every time we look at the city budget, depending on the lens that we use, these percentages are a little bit different. But as tonight's our truth and taxation hearing, we thought it'd be valuable to highlight that information. What that 6.95% increase to the property tax levy means on the median valued home for an individual who owns and lives in their own home is an increase of $109 to their annual property tax bill to just over $1,500, again, for the city only. So this excludes any increases associated with the Hennepin County or the Minneapolis Public Schools. It's about a 7.8% increase, and that compares to roughly 6% increase to the property value for that median home. When we talk about property taxes, we do always like to remind all of you and those in the audience, those watching at home, of the property tax refund programs offered through the state of Minnesota. There are 2 different, technically 3 different programs. One is the regular homestead credit and the renter property tax refund. Those are programs that are available to everybody, but there are income phase outs. So the greater your income is, the less refund is available. But there's also a special homestead credit, which is available to all individuals who own and live in their home if they've had a net increase to their property taxes of greater than 12% and at least $100. And that increase isn't related to any improvements that they've made to their home, then there's a circuit breaker where they're able to get a refund of that amount in excess of $100. So the point here is it's always valuable for folks to file that paperwork, even if they're not sure whether or not they qualify for those credits and refunds, because these do mean real dollars, into the hundreds in many cases. That concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to stand for questions or sit so that folks can make their comments.
I don't see any questions from the council. We've had ample opportunity to talk with you. Mr. Intermill, thank you so much for you and your staff's availability. Our clerk's office, our budget office staff, and many department heads are here, so we really thank you for being here into the evening tonight and all the work that you've done on this budget so far. Just a couple quick reminders before we open up the public hearing. So we'll be taking speakers in the order that they're registered. I have a photocopy, so the names are sometimes a little blurred. I'll do my very best, but I'll also tell your number along with that to help identify people. If you had a chance to speak at the first hearing, we had 88 people speak to us that time, and you're able to allow others to go first, we'd appreciate it. I don't have a list of those folks. I won't be cross-referencing, just a suggestion to allow us to hear from everyone in the community. That meeting and this one are both both commenting on the mayor's proposed budget. The city council hasn't taken any action yet on the budget. We will do so on Friday. So Councilmember Palmisano will go over this at the end, but just so you all know, in case you have to leave, on Friday starting at 10 o'clock. So tonight we're just here to listen quietly. We won't be making any comments or actions tonight. On Friday morning starting at 10 o'clock with the budget hearing, the budget committee meeting, we will be making our amendments and voting on those changes to the proposed budget. And then the following Wednesday, a week from tonight, we'll have a public hearing so that you can let us know what you think of any changes that the city council has made during that markup session. So we welcome your comments tonight in between, anytime between now and next Wednesday when we take that final vote on the budget. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. I'll ask you to wrap up if you've reached your 2 minutes out of respect for everyone's time to allow everyone to speak. I want to ask that people be respectful of each other. We have a lot of different opinions in the city, in this room, and we want to hear from each of you. We value all of your opinions and want to ask that you allow each other to speak and not disrupt each other's comments. And that's usually not a problem. You all probably, actually, a lot of you know each other, even if you don't agree. And then again, just a quick reminder, if you don't want to testify but want to comment, there's forms outside. Please sign in. And with that, I will make sure that we get going. So I will call on the first speaker, speaker 1, who's Megan. And if the next couple of speakers want to make their way over toward the microphone area, that would be great.
Good evening, council members. My name is Megan Eliason. I live at 3456 Pillsbury Avenue. I am the executive director of Nokomis Healthy Seniors, a community program. And for 25 years, we've been helping older adults live healthy and safe in their homes. I'm a resident of Minneapolis, and I'm here to ask you to approve the Schrader, Johnson, Jenkins, Reich amendment to increase funding for the Block Nurse programs, which serves over 1,500 of your seniors, and that's annually, as well as their caregivers who are balancing work and family, and over 300 neighborhood volunteers. In the interest of council time, I am speaking on behalf of all 3 Block Nurse programs, which is the Nokomis Healthy Seniors, Southeast Seniors, and the Longfellow Seward Seniors. Older adults want to stay in their own homes and communities and live independently as they age. Our cost-effective program utilizes hundreds of volunteers that contribute thousands of hours of preventative services, from rides to medical appointments to social opportunities that prevent isolation, exercise classes, preventative health care, and post-hospitalization visits. These help ensure that older adults have a choice of how they age. Last year, we provided 1,200 rides. That's mostly to medical appointments. 16,550 miles. That's over 3/4 of the circumference of the globe that we provide rides for these seniors. And we see a lot on these rides. We have seniors who seem to be losing weight from trip to trip, and we know they need food assistance. We see clients having a harder time getting into the car due to vision loss, and we can match them with the needed resources. We see clients more depressed than the last time and know they need help with their mental health. Our volunteers are the eyes and ears of our seniors. During rides, foot care, and home visits, they are listening to what our clients are saying or not saying. They see if the cupboards are empty. Was that my warning? Okay. Well, our program is vital to seniors in our area, and we hope that you can support this. We appreciate all the past and ongoing support, and we thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Speaker 2, Lisa.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Pong-Michelson, and I represent the YMCA of the Greater Twin Cities, and we're asking for your continued support for the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. We know that families in Minneapolis, like many cities, are facing some significant and complex challenges. Raising rents and a tight rental market have resulted in a lack of safe and affordable housing in our community. And this situation is affecting our youth's futures. More than 2,500 students in Minneapolis public schools experienced homelessness last year. Research shows that these students are less likely to graduate high school or attend post-secondary programs, which only widens the already large opportunity gap in Minneapolis for our students and people of color. This is unacceptable, and I am proud to be a part of a city that is boldly willing to do something about it. The YMCA is partnering on this dynamic solution that is led by our city to really move that needle and bring partners together to leverage the resources that they're best at providing to our community residents to make a lasting and sustainable difference. The Stable Home, Stable Schools program aims to end or prevent homelessness to over 650 children and their families over the next 3 years, while keeping these students connected to their school and on track to succeed academically. We are on track to exceed those goals with the continued support from the City of Minneapolis and our partners. To date, we have ended homelessness for 145 children in just 7 months. And we have connected more than 200 additional children to other resources along with their family members. There are currently 4 families that are pending move-in, and our hope is to have these families in their homes for the holidays. 100% of the children that we have served in this program have been able to remain in the same school. This is another indicator of academic success. Many of the families we're serving have 5 or more children and are facing some complex generational challenges. Together, we're moving these families from living in crisis to thriving, and we hope we can count on your continued support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker, speaker 3, Stacey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacey Sweeney, and I'm also representing the YMCA of the Greater Twin Cities in support of the Stable Home, Stable Schools initiative. And I brought forth a story from a family who's not able to be here tonight, but really would like to share the impact that this program has had. Mom and Dad, along with their 5 children, moved to Minneapolis from northern Minnesota after they found out Mom was pregnant with conjoined twins and needed to be close to their doctor. They had nowhere to go, so they moved into Mary's Place shelter. Mom gave birth, and the twin girls had multiple surgeries and needed extensive medical care, including 24-hour care, which resulted in neither parent being able to work. The family was not able to get nursing support for the girls until they had housing, leaving the family stuck in the shelter for more than 2 years. Because of the Stable Home, Stable Schools program, their 9-person family was able to secure a 5-bedroom home in their children's school busing zone. Dad has recently gone back to school to earn a certificate in construction management, and Mom has been able to apply and receive a grant to help pay for some of their daughter's medical care. Since moving into their home, their 5 oldest children have been attending school consistently and have a proper space to eat, sleep, study, and grow in. The twin girls are now 2 years old and are thriving in their new home, all thanks to Stable Home, Stable Schools. This type of impact would not be possible without the continued investment from the City of Minneapolis. And we hope that we can continue to count on your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Mark. And then we'll have 5, Lisa, 6, Grace, 7, Artemis.
Hi there, my name is Mark Splett. I live at 2641 34th Avenue South. I'm a member of the Seward Neighborhood Group and also South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition. And I also work with organizations that focus on addiction within the city of Minneapolis. I've lived in the Seward neighborhood for 10 years, and compared to a number of my neighbors, that's not a very long time. So it's concerning to me that these neighbors are voicing concerns of increased prevalence and visibility of crime, addiction, homelessness, and mental health crises. This is causing my neighbors to move away and discuss with other neighbors about their concerns and causing them to move away. I don't want these narratives to define my experience in my neighborhood, and that's why we need more focused street-level resources towards addiction, homelessness, and people experiencing mental health crises. I want to thank you all for your efforts recently in the past couple of years to reduce disparities in the city of Minneapolis and for making the city a more equitable place to live. I don't want the spirit of these recent efforts to be lost on the day-to-day experiences of my residents, my neighbors. That's why I'm asking for the council members to use their positions to find and invest in street-level public safety and livability resources to change the day-to-day lived experiences of the people in my community. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 5, Lisa.
My name is Lisa Balki, 2227 Minneapolis Avenue. I'm also a member of the Seward Neighborhood Group Board. I'm a retired public school teacher. I have seen over the years the issues that Mark has described. I've seen the issues that our speakers from the Y about stable homes, safe schools. My concern is that you continue to look at ways to strengthen programs for youth and the families, whether it be street outreach or whether it be after-school activities that are free. Many programs through the park board, through the schools, have fees. There are changing demographics. I have seen too many young people, I've always worked in high poverty schools, not have viable options for their interest. Yes, schools and libraries provide homework help, but unless they have access to programs that are free, they will be amusing themselves or looking for the excitement that may not help them in the future. And they don't see the consequences. They have the magical thinking of youth. Oh yeah, I've heard about that. That's not going to happen to me. And I have seen what successful programs for youth have done for children in difficult situations. Please look at all of the budget items with that lens when you are looking at anything that impacts youth. I have seen some miracles with students that I have taught, that my friends have taught in other schools, where
Thank you.
let me finish my sentence, Lisa, where they have, by all research, common sense descriptions, would fail to thrive, and they have thrived. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Speaker number 6, Grace, welcome.
Hi, my name is Grace Berkey, and I'm a renter in Ventura Village, and I'm also here today representing the South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition and the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. I want to echo the voices of many this budget season calling for investment in community-centered safety resources and affordable housing. I know that South Minneapolis does not have the resources needed to take care of people in our community facing homelessness, addiction, and mental illness, and I can see it when I walk down the street. I do not believe that the police department is a solution for a community that has been historically underfunded and under-resourced, particularly for people of color members of our community who have experienced trauma at the hands of the police. I want to see our city prioritize and invest in street-level outreach, restorative justice, youth programming, and other strategies to ensure that everyone in our community is healthy and safe. I urge you to fully fund programs and services in order to truly meet the needs existing in our community today. I urge you to invest in affordable housing and to do so quickly because so many people will continue to be homeless until those solutions have been fully funded. I urge you to continue to be critical in what community priorities desperately need funding this year and to be equally as critical about where there are existing inefficiencies in the budget. Please help us create a city where resources can be accessed by people who need them before 911 is called, where everyone who wants to be are housed, and where everyone in our community is safe. Please fund solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 7, Artemis. Then we'll have Emily, Carl, and Adway.
Hi, my name is Artemis, and I live at 2519 East 22nd Street in Seward. And I am here to request that the council fund 2 full-time year-round permanent trans equity staff roles, starting with the 2020 annual budget. Developing mechanisms to listen to and effectively support the Minneapolis trans and gender nonconforming communities is impossible without support. And while the actions of previous underfunded trans equity staff and some support from council members have resulted in increased attendance to the Trans Equity Summit and the support of every the support of every council member is needed to achieve effective ongoing support for trans and gender nonconforming communities in this city. 2 full-time positions have massive potential to impact our communities, as has been seen in the cases where Nikki, Line Gang, and Track Trachtenberg were given part-time support in undertaking this work as trans equity staff members. There is great potential for these positions. Already, the Trans Equity Council has been able to form subcommittees in partnership with other city staff, start an LGBTQ plus employee resource group with the trans issues work group, and table at Pride, MNPOC Pride, and other local art events. Given the major successes seen in growing the scope and accessibility of the Trans Equity Summit with only a marginal increase in hours for Trachtenberg, it is obvious that these two positions would allow it to become a deeply integrated, community-planned event. With more hours comes more input. The Trans Equity Council could engage the community by offering events and holding listening sessions in community spaces for Black trans youth. It would allow for more work to be put into mapping community resources on the website. These positions would provide the space and support for proactive action on the part of the Trans Equity Council to develop information and infrastructure to aid the City Council in supporting trans equity, while doing its own work in the community. It is necessary that every council member support this initiative in order to allow the Trans Equity Council to continue building relationships within the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 8, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Wade, and I live in Stevens Square, and I work for an organization called Our Streets Minneapolis. We work for a city where biking, walking, and rolling are easy and comfortable for everyone, and we do this work because we believe that everyone should get to be able to get where they're going in the way that works best for them, and because we know that abundant walking and biking lead to happy people, a strong economy, and a healthy environment. At Our Streets, we support the $100,000 included in the budget for Vision Zero, the program to eliminate traffic injuries and serious deaths on our streets. But we know that the $100,000 in non-renewing funding is not enough. People won't walk and bike if they don't feel comfortable doing it. There are 114 miles of streets in the Vision Zero high injury network. With only $100,000 budgeted, that's just $877 per mile. It's not enough. I'd also like to frame this funding in a different way. Part of my work at Our Streets is keeping track of everyone who is killed biking and walking in Minneapolis. It is by far the worst part of my job. Since the City Council passed a Vision Zero resolution in September 2017, 16 people biking and walking have been killed by people driving. This is 16 friends, 16 family members, 16 people who were just trying to get home. $100,000 is $6,250 per life that we have lost since the city committed to Vision Zero. And that's absolutely unacceptable. And it doesn't even include the people who lost their lives driving in Minneapolis during that time. Please increase the funding designated to Vision Zero and put it toward what we know works, life-saving street design improvements. We absolutely cannot lose more people this way. We have to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 9, Carl. Then we'll have Adway, Sheila, and Devika.
Thank you, council members. Carl Noyes. I'm with the Minneapolis Students for a Sensible Drug Policy. In my short time, I want to advocate that City Council put $1.2 million towards the creation of 2 overdose prevention sites, also known as safe injection sites, one in North Minneapolis and one in South Minneapolis. As you know, 2019 was another record year for overdoses and overdose deaths. I was on the mayor's 2018 opioid task force and was in meetings where we were told by his assistants that safe injection sites were off the table. I'm here to ask why. What could be more important than saving the lives of citizens who elected you all as representatives? Already city leadership in Baltimore, Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, and Boston are pushing forward with overdose prevention site plans. The public health science on them has been settled for decades, and recently a federal judge ruled that efforts in Philadelphia were legal and accepted health interventions and saved lives. Why is Minneapolis so far behind on this issue? Where is our 5-year plan? Is it because it's people of color that die of higher rates of overdose? Is it because the neighborhoods with highest rates of poverty are the ones primarily impacted by cycles of trauma and addiction? These neighborhoods are no accident. They were created decades ago by redlining and racial covenants. We as a city owe impacted neighborhoods our investment. In May, the city gave the family of Justine Diamond, a white woman, $20 million for her death. Surely the city can find $1.2 million to provide the resources to open overdose prevention sites in our Minneapolis. I thank the city council members that have already vocally support overdose prevention sites, and I ask that other members, including the mayor, come out publicly in support of creating overdose prevention sites and saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 10, Adway.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adway Pugh, and I am a Jordan resident. I am also the founder of and executive director of Off the Blue Couch, a nonprofit in North Minneapolis that promotes recovery and healing initiatives that transform. I started Off the Blue Couch because I was a drug user, and although my drug of choice was cocaine, a drug is a drug and addiction is addiction. 15 years ago, I made a conscious decision to stop using drugs, but others aren't there yet. And programs like safe injection sites, walk-in mental health counseling, naloxone distribution, and spaces for harm reduction education initiatives should be considered. Funding should also be considered for Black-owned and operated organizations in North Minneapolis without us having to apply for a grant. Organizations like A Mother's Love, Mad Dads, Off the Blue Couch that are doing the boots on the ground work should be considered for funding. Our community is affected. North Minneapolis is tired. We are tired of being overlooked and forgotten. We are here, we're not going anywhere, and we won't let you forget it.
Thank you. Speaker 11, Sheila.
Hi, I'm Sheila Delaney. I live at 306 Oak Grove Street, Loring Park, Minneapolis. I'm coming before you. I have a lot of engagement in a lot of organizations, but I'm here before you as a resident who I think I'm really reflective of the city in some ways. I appreciate a lot of the aspects of our 2020 budget. I particularly appreciate the unprecedented investment in affordable housing, but would like to see us move to a dedicated source. I came out tonight specifically to talk to you about two things that are of great concern to me. One, as I said, a person in a city are a lot of things. One of the things I am is a domestic assault and sexual assault survivor. I am strongly in favor of having more investigators for domestic and sexual assault. I am also in favor of more neighborhood and community outreach and community resources for all of us. Particularly, I appreciate the co-responder program. My neighbors in Loring Park have used that in partnership with Councilmember Goodman's office, and it's effective, and I want to have more access to that. Primarily, I'm here today to tell you that while I am deeply appreciative of the mayor's move to put $75,000 towards bail reform, as the progressive city that we are, I know we can do better. Other cities, 75 cities in Alabama, have ended cash bail. I want this council and this mayor to ask the city attorney to end cash bail, except in extreme circumstances. Another thing I am is a person who had a DWI in 2014. I went to jail. From the very beginning, my experience was amazing. The officers joked with me. They let me have my phone in the car. What did I do with that phone? I called my network. At that time, I had no means of my own. I was self-employed, but I had a network, and my network got to work for me. So while I was in jail, they were reaching out. I woke up in the morning. There was a woman sitting on my bed. Her name is Cece. I'm going to tell you. She offered me Kool-Aid, a cookie. Anyway, Cece had been languishing in jail. I got out that day because my network went to work. All my attorney knew, he didn't know I could pay him. I didn't know I could pay him. My attorney knew who my friends were. My attorney knew that I was white. Cash bail is unequal justice. I was not more innocent until proven guilty than Cece or any of the other women that languished in jail. I want you to seriously move on cash bail reform and pre-trial detention. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 12, Davika. Then we'll have Amber, Al, and Alicia.
Hi, good evening. My name is Devika and I live in East Phillips. On Monday morning, when I stepped out of my front door to go to work, I almost stepped right on the face of someone who was sleeping inside our front porch. When I looked closer, I realized he was a young homeless man. I'm not going to tell you his name, but he's someone that we know from our neighborhood. He was wrapped up in an old sleeping bag we'd offered him and using my partner's boot as his pillow. As you know, the Lake Street corridor, along which I live, is often held up as the poster child of why MPD needs more funding. But I just can't understand how an $8 million gift to the police is going to help the young Latino man who was sleeping in our 30-degree front porch with a boot as his pillow. Yes, this person has a drug addiction, and he buys and uses on our street, but we already know the best solutions to that: safe housing, mental health counseling, treatment, and social services. What is not going to help is another police officer. The only people you are helping when you send a police officer to a scene like that are the white homeowners who are offended by the sight of poor people of color around them, especially homeless people and people with addictions. Increasing policing is not only a false solution, it's a slap in the face to people of color and immigrants who, as you know, are disproportionately overrepresented in the incarcerated population in this state. And that statistic is true even if you don't count the hundreds of immigrants who are incarcerated in Minnesota for ICE. Of course, the vast majority of them wind up in ICE detention because of contact with the police. 1 in 5 people in a Minnesota prison are there on drug charges. And when an immigrant gets arrested on drug charges, they automatically get put into deportation proceedings. I have accompanied many such people to their court hearings and ICE check-ins. I've hugged their partners and held their babies while they get put in handcuffs at Fort Snelling. This is why I never feel okay calling the police when I see people of color buying or using drugs on our street. I am not comfortable being the person who is essentially signing their deportation order, and you shouldn't be either. As a city council of a sanctuary city, I know you can do better than that. Please invest in real solutions for our community, not more police. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 13, Amber, welcome.
Hello. My name is Amber Sun. I live on Girard Avenue South in Lowry Hill. I am here in support of the $75,000 that the mayor has proposed for bail reform, but I think we can do more. I lived in New York City for 15 years. I moved back to Minneapolis, my hometown, about 5 years ago. And frankly, I've been shocked at the level of racial disparity that exists in my hometown. And especially because I always held out Minneapolis as such a progressive city and Minnesota is such a progressive state to my coastal elite friends in New York City. I've recently become aware of and more involved in the cash bail reform and social and criminal justice reform in this city. I more fully understand the social inequality and hugely disproportionate impact that cash bail has on our communities of color. I'm here to respectfully request that the City Council ask the City Attorney to end cash bail and focus our attention on ways in which our citizens can more thoroughly be assessed for risk. Criminal justice reform is at the heart of any effort to stem the tide of racial inequality in our country, and we should have the courage in Minneapolis and the leadership to start with that small change right here in our hometown. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Al, then Alicia, Anthony.
Thank you. I thought you was going to slip over me, Chairman Bender. I thought you said Alicia on me, scared me. But thank you, Councilmember Chairman Bender, Vice Chair Jenkins, and to the mayor. I came here today. We've been sitting up here. We're talking about some tragic things, whether it's about ICE, whether it's about the bike lanes and making people safe. I'm gonna say this, that and young Trey Johnson is handing y'all a document that some of y'all have. I've given it to some of y'all, but I wanted him to give it to you because I want these young kids to know we fighting for them. And I want to say, but nobody's in here, and I don't believe nobody coming to say, over 240 African Americans or people of color, over 80-some% shot in the city of Minneapolis. 40 dead. 30 people in St. Paul, over 30 people in St. Paul did. What we did is organize together with St. Paul and Minneapolis with groups that work on these issues of violence. Well, that's what I did. I'm organizing it. I talked to our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, because I'm saying just like the ICE and the federal government is discriminating against immigrants, you are discriminating against African Americans, the descendants of the slave, because you won't work with them. You won't work with them. You want to tell us what to do, but you won't work with them. Everybody seems to think we ain't got the big issue with the police. I done been jumped many times by the police, but that ain't my issue. I don't want Trey to hate the police. I don't want the young kids to hate the police. We got to figure that out as grown-ups. I do not want them hating the police, especially right now when we got a black chief that will try to do everything he can for our community. So when somebody like a Miski Noor, who's from the Somali community, said it doesn't matter about African-American chief, yes, it does if you've been here under this oppression. So I want to say to y'all, we fighting right now. I'm going to the Attorney General and say if they don't help us, if you don't help us, if this city, we met with Governor Walz, we met with Governor Walz, we met with people in the county, we met with I went all around. But I wanted to bring us together. And we're together, and we will show up at the next budget meeting next week. We are together in the African-American community, and it ain't about about the police I could kill. We need police. We getting killed in the neighborhood, so you can sit there. If you ain't over there in it, don't say you can't say nothing to me. I'm watching the death. I watched the mother get killed by her boyfriend. That's domestic abuse. Councilmember Cunningham, put that under the violence prevention program. Don't lump us in there because we're gonna get left again. And that's all I'm asking. I'm asking y'all, I know it's time to step back, Lisa.
Thank you.
I know it's time to step back, but I'm saying quit playing. I'm going to the Attorney General. If we get discriminated against anymore, that's my role. I'll let the other people fight the battle, what they've been doing for Safe Street. But we're going to do the same thing like Keith Ellison is fighting for the immigrant community. He's going to have to tell y'all to do us right. And you should put over $2 million or something to deal with the violence in our community, Mayor. I've told y'all once, now it's time to fight. It's time for African Americans to fight. It's right now. So I'm going to say that. My part is to get the Attorney General.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll just remind folks to address your comments through me, the chair, rather than addressing council members by name. Speaker 15, Alicia. Welcome.
All right. My name is Alicia Smith. I am the executive director for the Quirk neighborhood, also here as an avid community organizer and an advocate for young people and for people in general. But what Mr. Flowers was referring to you guys as is the handout that my son Walter III handed you guys was the Minnesota Safe Streets. And what it is a comprehensive approach and plan from the Black community, specifically and very intentional around solutions that are community-based, community-proven with folks that have boots on the ground. We're talking about addressing trauma. We're talking about a critical response and pre-response to the issues affecting our communities and affecting our people. And like Mr. Flowers said, what I don't want is for my children to grow up and hate the police. While there is an innate fear because of the things that they've witnessed on television and seen as we've driven by, they have not had a personal experience. And I will not allow for that to happen. But it is important that we allow the people that are the experts that come from the community to address these issues. You can no longer have systems and institutions telling folks what to do. You now have to step back and allow the experts to address it and get some solutions and get some actions to move some things. I was at a vigil on Monday for a family that was gunned down, and there's a vigil tonight for the young woman that was killed. We are suffering, and not just Black people, but there are a lot of things going on in this world, and it is violent, and we have to address it. And if we don't begin to address it internally with our people, have some honest dialogue, we will continue to see blood spilled on the streets and on the sidewalks, and it will continue to impact and indoctrinate our children and desensitize them to where they don't have any repercussions or fear of those consequences. And so I encourage you to take a look at some of these community-based solutions, community alternatives, address in the safety of these communities, and let the people do it. It's time for the systems to stop. So I thank you. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. Speaker 16, Anthony. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mayor, council members. My name is Anthony McMorris Rice, and I am part of A Mother's Love. Yeah, powerful stuff that everybody brung up. Very important, just as equally as important as anything else. The main thing is most important is lives, bodies, you know, and being able to come together as a community to put forth some sort of solution to the problems that we may have not created, but problems that we feel as though as community members, as neighbors, as friends, as families, that we could come together and solve those same sort of problems or issues that we face. And I personally ask for support from the city. Just a beautiful city, you know. Some people migrate from different states to come to this state to live, and they, you know, after a few years, they say, hey, well, I might as well go back to where I came from. But other than that, you know, I want to really talk about the reentry program, about people coming from prison back into the community and having that same chance. You know, once you do your time, you did the crime, you do your time, you should be able to come back into society and live as if you are equal to your counterpartners. And if not, then it's something that needs to be done. I mean, you know, we could be referred to as ex-felons, ex-cons, whatever the case may be. If that was the case, then most of us would never got out on early release, and most of us would never got out, period. So we can't be that much of a threat to society. So I would like to, you know, put some things into play where people reenter back out to, you know, society to have something. Housing is the most important thing, and then other jobs like that. But I hope I made sense. I'm kind of coming down from a cold, and I hope every one of you had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 17, I can't read your name. I'm so curious.
It's a different name, Merv Morehead. I live in Eastside. So I'm here to voice my support for the inclusion of the additional 14 officers as a key component of the mayor's proposed budget. My support for the additional officers is firmly rooted in the specific goals of the Minneapolis 2040 Comprehensive Plan. There are 3 specific goals within the plan that I don't believe are achievable without a strong sense of public safety throughout the city of Minneapolis. Goal number 2 is more residents, more jobs. Companies will not relocate or invest in Minneapolis without the belief that Minneapolis is a safe place to do business. The expansion of public transportation is also a key to the overall growth, and right now there's a pervasive belief that it is unsafe in the city. Goal 5 is healthy, safe, and connected people. The city is in need of a more visible and active police presence, particularly along the Hennepin and Nicollet Avenue corridors. These are major thoroughfares for public transportation and commerce, and unfortunately, there are no-go zones for many of the people in Minneapolis. In complete neighborhoods, the city is pushing for walking, biking, and the utilization of public transportation, but once again, public safety is an issue that will hinder this goal. The current environment is pushing people to forego walking and public transportation in favor of using rideshare companies, or worst of all, choosing not to take advantage of what is available in the city of Minneapolis. So, again, I'm in full support of the additional 14 officers in the mayor's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 18, Miriam, and then Valentina, Hani, Bobby. Welcome.
Hi folks, my name's Miriam and I live in the Phillips neighborhood. So I'm here with Reclaim the Block today to demand that City Council fund violence prevention and not 14 more cops. Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what is violence prevention, right? What is safety? The friend who was up here last, right, cares about safety too, right? And we're here to say that violence prevention, right, actually reducing that violence, we can't do that with the police. So a couple weeks ago, I volunteered with Reclaim the Block to have conversations with strangers about community safety over at Midtown Global Market. And one of the questions we were asking folks was, what would you want your city to fund to actually prevent violence? And here's what we heard. We heard actually affordable housing, right? We heard youth services. harm reduction responses to the opioid crisis, and mental health response teams. And that's exactly what we're here, Reclaim the Block, asking for today, right? We know that every dollar we give to MPD is a dollar we're not investing in actual violence prevention. Evidence shows that, right? That's what the people want, the people in your community, and that's also what data backs us up. So that's what we're asking here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 19, Valentina.
I'm Bobby Hall. And we switched.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No problem. Oh, Bobby.
I live at 3712 Columbus Avenue. You guys may know me from Occupy. I also have a nonprofit called Minnesota Renewable Now. We're promoting hydrogen fuel cells. We're promoting a new way of living through education into hydrogen fuel cells, okay? We think we can take your floodwaters and change it into fuel. We can release the oxygen into the atmosphere to repair the ozone. And of course, if you breathe more clean oxygen, you're going to think better, feel better, okay? We're a nonprofit and we get our money from outside sources, not from the city. I do believe that the police department needs more help, okay? I deal with a lot of people with head trauma, and when I call the police for them to be escorted to the hospital, sometimes it takes 7 to 8 police officers to take them people in. And I noticed in the last 2 years, the police officers have been much more gentle and more sensitive. We have an officer, Lieutenant Snyder, okay? We helped him raise $10,000 to pass out hats and gloves and coats. I think our chief of police is a warm, loving, tender person from Minneapolis. As a matter of fact, I know him quite well. He might be my nephew. But I think he has a good heart, and he's very spiritual. And we're seeing more spirituality in the police department. My son was ran over by a police officer back in 1995. Turned the headlights out and ran him over because he was out after curfew. They even beat him up, refusing medical attention. I've worked with the police department to solving problems like this. And in the last couple of years since our chief has been in here, I've seen a remarkable change in our police department. Okay? I'd like to promote healthy living through hydrogen fuel cells, and I think we can help a lot of people. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Valentina, are you here? Perfect. Let's go back to you.
Sorry, got some stuff with me. So my name is Valentina. I'm here with Reclaim the Block, Tool, and Black Visions Collective. This morning, a group of us took this budget back to Mayor Fry's office, and we returned it to him. We deserve better than this and what he is offering us. We ask you to join us. Amend this budget so that when it lands on Mayor Fry's desk again, that it will be a budget that our city deserves. And it will reflect the kind of city that we want to be. Sorry. When we look at this budget, we see the status quo. There are tweaks here and there, but overall, it does nothing to create the visionary change required to address the crises of domestic violence, homelessness, and drug and addiction that are hitting our communities hard. Mayor Fry's budget gives the Office of Violence Prevention a pay cut, just as it is getting its work to begin, so that Minneapolis Police Department can get an $8 million raise. We know Mayor Fry is responsible for this budget. We are not letting him off the hook. But for now, while it is in your hands, we are relying on you to fix it. You guys know that you can do better than this. We are here because we love this city. We are dreaming about what it could look like years from now if we started getting to the root causes of violence today.
Hey.
Hi. Speaker.
How y'all doing? My name is Hani. I live on 32nd and Clinton. Also here with Reclaim the Block, Black Visions Collective. And so what I wanted to say is that people in this ward, every ward of the city are ready for profound change. We're tired of living in a city with some of the biggest disparities in this nation. Disparities that were created by decisions about resources, decisions like the ones you're going to make today. Historically, these decisions have prioritized funding for white communities, while Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities have been forgotten and policed. We're counting on you to make bold choices that reverse these disparities instead of making them worse. And we're not the only ones that feel that way. So in front of you are petitions signed by over 700 people who want a Minneapolis where we don't hire 14 new cops, but instead fund violence prevention, care for our kids by investing in youth homelessness services instead of criminalizing young people, fund solutions to the opioid crisis at the scale of the crisis itself, send mental health response teams, not police, when our neighbors experience mental health crises, and enforce wage theft laws that protect workers in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be 22, Charles, then Camille, then Ricardo. Then we'll be at the end of the sheet. I'm going to pause then and see if there's any speakers who have young kids that need to get home. So if that's you, you'll be able to feel free to come up after speaker 24 and you'll just tell me which number you had. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Charles Frempong London Jr. I live at 735 East 16th Street, Ward 9, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm here with Black Visions Collective tonight. Minneapolis Police Department has a track record of failing our communities. This is not about Chief Ardondo. Chief Ardondo isn't the first chief that has come into MPD calling for reform. But history shows us that these reforms never actually materialize. We aren't here to criticize Chief Ardondo. We are here because no matter who is chief of Minneapolis Police Department, they continue to show us their true colors. And it's irresponsible to keep responding year after year by giving them a raise. The police chief has the authority to shift Minneapolis Police Department staffing to do what needs to be done. If it was important for the Minneapolis Police Department to process 1,700 untested rape kits, they already would have done it. If it was important to MPD to put more beat cops in neighborhoods, getting to know the neighbors and building trust, they already would have done it. Instead, MPD decided to target Black people downtown with low-level marijuana stings. Just last month, MPD decided to tear down camps where our neighbors are sleeping in tents and confiscating their belongings, right when the cold Minnesota winter was setting in and shelters are full. MPD has shown us what their priorities are. These priorities are not ours. Are they yours? Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 23, Camille, then Ricardo. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Camille Mitchell. I live at 33rd and 5th Avenue. So what do we do to build safety in Minneapolis? The solutions aren't a mystery, they're just under-resourced. We're not here because of what we're against, but because of what we're for. Harm reduction programs like needle exchanges and safe injection sites reduce overdose deaths. Affordable housing makes neighborhoods more stable and keeps people safe. Treating gun violence as a public health issue reduces gun violence. When mental health professionals respond to mental health crises, the people involved are more likely to get the help they need, and the demand on the police response system is reduced. It's time to stop expecting programs like these to transform our cities if we're only giving them small one-time investments. The police have had over 150 years of steady funding that grow year after year. If they are going to produce transformative results, it would have happened by now. We wish that Mayor Frey had been visionary and bold enough to build a budget that gives our communities what we deserve. But since he didn't, we need to do better. Join us, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 24, Ricardo. And then again, if there's anyone who needs to get home with little ones, just come on up now, or that's a standing offer. Welcome.
Hello, Ricardo Levins Morales, 2311 East 32nd Street, artist and business owner, 9th and 2nd Wards, 3rd Precinct, 7th decade. Speaking in memory of Fred Hampton, killed by a police death squad 50 years ago today. I want to start by acknowledging that the police are doing a remarkably effective job, and that's a problem. We need to know that the U.S. police system was set up following the Civil War to resolve one urgent problem: how to keep black people in servitude after emancipation. And the solution was criminalization. Whether through the black codes, war on drugs, broken windows policing, stop and frisk, racially selective enforcement, deliberate provocation, planted evidence, falsifying reports, and of course punishing protest. It works by permanently branding millions of dark people with felony records, almost always with pleas, not with trials, and deliberately and legally slamming shut the door on life opportunities, removing them from competition with white people for jobs, housing, education, credit, voting, running for office, and serving on juries. In fact, of all of the programs and functions that the police have taken on over the decades, this is the only one they do consistently and well. Trying to address the problems, including crime, addiction, homelessness, violence, and trauma that this apartheid policing system has done so much to fuel by feeding it with more millions of dollars, is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. And forget about the soothing reassurance that you'd be supporting our first black chief in his community-friendly reform mission. Look at the track record around the country. Reformist police chiefs are like Post-it notes. They leave no trace behind when they're gone. The real MPD is the Department of Bob Kroll and Cops for Trump. And think about what that means on the community level. That's what it's been since 1867. It will never be anything different. Let's get serious about real solutions, starting now, or at the latest, Friday morning at 10 a.m.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaker 5 is Tony. Okay. What? Did you have a number?
I did. We all have a number.
Just tell me what they are when you...
94.
Okay.
93.
92. 91.
Okay, I'll find you. Thank you.
So you guys already know who I am, but just for folks out who came and showed the numbers, thank you for inviting us today, because I wouldn't have even known that today was the budget hearing. So I'm coming because of Reclaim the Block and all the organizers who put this together. But I was also supposed to be at a Green Zone meeting and also with Juxta. So I brought the Juxta team with me. Because they've kind of been learning about different things happening. We've also been working on different, you guys want to talk?
Community engagement.
Community engagements and incentives. We've gotten some of the funding that you guys have given out to communities to come up with our own community safety strategies. So I felt that it was only fair to come up here and show you some of the work that we've been doing with some of the money that you guys have allocated instead of giving it to the police. So one, I have Tasia here. She's gonna bring you a gift. You wanna bring them? Yeah. We had a gift. We actually gave you guys all one, but you guys couldn't take it, so you sent them back to us.
We probably can't take them, but we'll see. Well, we have rules.
Right, right. But it's a little gift box that we do. We call it a little healing kit. It's got some sage in it, a little journal, a pen. We passed hundreds of these out on the block to people just randomly, in mostly areas where they're saying that there's lots of crime happening. We've also done different activities. Do you guys, one of y'all want to talk about the different activities? Real quick, before I pass the mic, I just want to say real quick, I was calling the police a lot. It wasn't helping at all. And I think you guys know I've had numerous issues with police, ruining my cars, spying in my girls' windows, 1 in the morning, and then just recently almost being tasered in a grocery store. So I didn't get any calls back on that, by the way, which is kind of like, dang, if you can't help the person who's out here working for the city, then I'm worried and concerned about the average person out here for sure. But I just wanted to say, instead of giving money to the police, I went and got myself a security system, and I haven't had any issues with the police nor abusive ex-boyfriends. So I would just say, please put some funding into paying for people's security systems out here. I think that's a much better use for money to help out with domestic violence situations. And you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Elijah. I'm at Juxtaposition Arts. I've been there for going on 3 years in January. And this summer, with the money that we were given from the grant, we started the we continued the Broadway Vibrations, which is a community-based kind of self-help. We create our own forms of benefiting our community in ways that we, the people of our community, see fit. We go out, we give out our healing kits, which we all designed, from everything to what we felt that would benefit people. And we also went around and asked people directly to fill out surveys. We questioned them. We had people give us their honest opinions on how they felt we could better our community. And the number of people that said, we need more police, it was so low, it's like hard to count. And then the people that wanted to actually better our community through ourselves, through families, through getting kids off the street, they were the loudest people. They were the first there. They were the first to come. They were the first to bring their kids and show them what a healthy community can be. And I feel that through this summer, we've shown a lot more of what we can do than what the police can do.
And we'll just end it with this. When we went out to the block, we intervened and interrupted at least 4 situations, just by passing out flyers, making jokes, having games, tournaments, playing movies. We talked to people out there who were out there struggling. We talked to people who were out there addicted. We talked to people who were out there drunk as hell. We talked to people who were out there selling dope or selling weed. And, we all came to the conclusion that people out there want to do better, but there's no investments out there in the communities. There's nothing for people to do out there. And a lot of people enjoyed a lot of the stuff that we did, and they begged for more. And I mean, I've been here so much, and everybody out here has been so much. I feel like we come and talking in circles with you guys. But you guys already know there's no point in funding more police. It's about time to really put more energy into people, y'all.
Thank you.
Oh, wait. Okay.
My name's Tasia, and I'm from Juxtaposition Arts. I'm a paid apprentice. I work in 2 different labs, contemporary arts and tactical urbanism. And I agree with a lot of what not everybody, but mostly what everybody's been saying. And one thing that I will leave on is, if the murderer has a badge, who am I supposed to call?
That's right.
That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Thank you. This is going to bring us to speakers 25. But, okay, yep, that's okay. Come on up.
Muy buenas noches a todos.
Good evening, everybody.
Mi nombre es Juana Montiel, soy miembro de CETUL.
My name is Juana Montiel, and I'm a member of CETUL.
Estoy aquí contando mi historia.
I'm here telling my story.
Trabajé aquí en Minneapolis cuidando niños.
I worked in Minneapolis taking care of kids.
Y mi patrón ya no me pagó el último mes.
And my boss didn't pay me for the final month.
Estuve haciéndole llamadas, mandando mensajes y nunca respondió.
Calling him, sending him texts, he never responded.
Entonces llegué a CETUL.
So I went to CETUL.
Y ellos me ayudaron.
And they supported me.
Para cobrar el dinero que el señor me debía por mi trabajo.
To be able to recover the wages that he hadn't paid me.
Es por eso que estamos aquí pidiendo.
That's why we're here today asking
presupuesto para investigadores,
a budget for investigators,
porque este problema es de equidad para las personas de color y negras.
This is an issue of equity for people of color, for black folks.
Tenemos más probabilidades de sufrir
we are more likely to suffer
robos salariales
wage theft
que los blancos
than white people.
Por eso pedimos que en lugar de dar más dinero a los policías,
and that's why we ask that instead of giving more money to police,
deberían de dar más como a las organizaciones que ayudan a los trabajadores.
We should give more money and contracts to organizations that help workers.
Necesitamos más organizaciones como CETUL.
We need more organizations like
CETUL los trabajadores.
That educate workers.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Emilio.
Good evening, my name is Emilio.
Yo soy miembro de CETUL
I'm a member of CETUL,
y también estoy aquí para contar mi experiencia que pasaron en 3 trabajos que estuve acá en Minneapolis.
and I'm here to tell my story about 3 instances that happened at 3 different jobs here in Minneapolis.
Por parte de las compañías que contratan, me robaron mi sueldo,
3 of the companies that I work for stole my wages,
en el cual yo tuve mucha necesidad con mis gastos que tenía yo que hacer por la renta y los demás biles.
which I had a lot of bills to pay and rent to pay and things to take care of.
Tenía que ir a algunos lugares donde regalaban comida para poderme sostener en el tiempo que mi dinero estaba en bolsas de otras personas.
And I had to go to different places to be able to get free food because my money was tied up with these bosses.
Hasta que empecé a luchar y con CETUL tuve que lograr hasta como al año y medio mi sueldo que me habían robado.
Until I started to fight together with Setul until we were able to win back my wages.
Por eso estamos aquí pidiendo esa ayuda, ese apoyo, para que haya organizaciones como CETUL donde apoye a la gente.
And that's why we're here asking for more support and for more funding so that organizations like Setul can support people
Que sufren esos atropellos,
that are suffering those kinds of problems,
robando nuestro sueldo que hemos ganado
having their wages stolen
con el sudor de nuestra frente.
that we've earned by the sweat of our brow.
Y si ustedes toman en cuenta esto y nos apoyan,
And if you hear us and you support us,
creo yo, como él dice el dicho ese,
like the saying goes,
el pobre será menos triste si conoce la sonrisa y el apoyo de un amigo.
the poor man is happier if he meets the smile and the support of a friend.
Esto ha sido mi experiencia del robo de sueldo y esperamos que nos apoyen.
That's been my experience with wage theft, and I hope you
Muchas gracias, que la pasen bien. Feliz Navidad a todos
Thank you,
ustedes.
and hope you have a good Christmas.
Thank you. Okay. This brings us to speaker 25, Tony.
Hi, my name is Tony Garan, 3712 Columbus Avenue. September 2nd to November 16th last year, I was homeless. I was a resident of Tent City. Since I've turned my life around, I've collaborated on a film that's just premiered in Salzburg, Austria. I'm a recovering heroin addict. I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for the street level outreach groups. I stand before you today asking for a solution to this homeless epidemic. More funding to street level outreach, more funding to these walk-in mental health clinics. Without these organizations, I wouldn't be standing in front of you today. I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing right now. I think it's important to put more funding into this homeless epidemic. There's other cities out there right now that are paving the way, and we're standing by the wayside. I think we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hey, peace and much love. I'm number 51, but I got some things I gotta do. But I respect you guys' time, and I really appreciate it. And one thing that I really want to express to everybody is that the community is grieving right now. We really need your support. And we're just asking for some funds, just some little funds that we can help our people to really do what we need to do. We have homelessness. We need affordable housing for the people that are out there sleeping. Minneapolis gets way too cold to be fighting about affordable housing. We also need to worry about wage theft, because wage theft happens way more than property theft. So how I heard about wage theft was through organizations, community organizations like Setul, who has done the outreach and have knocked door to door and has talked to me and other people about the wages that we've lost. Nurses that work through their breaks that don't get compensated, the people that give us our food, everybody. Also the drug epidemic. We need the houses for safe needle disposals and places that they can be comfortable and do what they have to do, because we don't want them on the streets, because we want to be safe, and police officers do not make people safe. And I'm nervous right now. I don't know why I'm nervous. I'm talking about my safety, and it feels like I got to beg for it, and it's really sad that it has to be that way. And I feel like in this room we have a lot of strong community leaders that are ready to hit the ground running, and all we just need is some funding. Please. Peace and much love.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Speaker 26, Bashir.
Bashir traded with me. I'm 84.
Okay.
And I have a small child to get home to. Been working all day. My name is Felicia Perry. My address is 2130 Lindell Avenue North Side. That's the 4th Precinct area. I grew up in that area, so over 35 years of experience with the MPD, specifically the 4th Precinct. They even hung out in my high school. They hang out at the gas station where a lot of drug deals happen 2 blocks from my house, but that's not even what I was going to get into. So I live, work, and fellowship in North Minneapolis. I work for the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition. I partner with the City of Minneapolis. I collaborate with Juxtaposition Arts, and hundreds of organizations and individual business owners, entrepreneurs, artists who are also entrepreneurs, throughout the Twin Cities. I have worked on projects such as Black Business Week, Minneapolis, in its inaugural year this year, working directly with some of you here as well as the mayor. How you doing, Jacob? So the interesting thing about some of those collaborations that I've even done with you all, it has really been piecing together bits and pieces of things and being really creative to try to come up with solutions. They've been working. You all have the data. And yet we're still putting Band-Aids on huge gashes in a community and in various communities that have largely not seen investment. I propose that we spend those millions of dollars and invest directly into small business owners, specifically in communities like North Minneapolis, specifically in a business district, which I know you all are going to be naming or have named as a cultural district, and y'all gonna give me my time, in North Minneapolis, because you know that I'm solution-based. You know what I can do with the money. I've worked with several of you. The police have not done the things that I have done to provide safety. Freedom Square, Flow Northside Arts Crawl, the activations at Juxta that I partner with them with, all of them, you have data showing that calls are reduced during that time. You're not getting the same kind of calls and issues of crime. We are doing the work. Invest in us directly to allow us to sustain this work, to scale up this work. Don't give us $15,000 for business technical assistance for all of the businesses in that community. More. We need more.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peace, y'all. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're at 27, Whittier Strong. Then 28 will be Jeff, then Joe.
Hello, my name is Whittier Strong. I live at 1812 First Avenue South, here as a private citizen. Yesterday, I received an email from my landlord urging tenants to come to this meeting in support of increased police presence as a matter of deterring property crimes in the Stevens Square neighborhood. The email specifically targeted the homeless community residing primarily in Stevens Square Park, a community that I should say is primarily people of color. The entire email is framed as a homeless problem. I do not believe in the homeless. I believe in people dealing with homelessness. I myself have been near homelessness multiple times in my life. The only things that saved me were a little luck and a lot of privilege. So what I want to say is that we do not have a homeless problem. We have a housing problem. Increasing police presence does not solve a housing problem. The good news is that the city has established a precedent for better ways to deal with the challenges of homelessness. The city worked with community leaders in helping people to transition out of the encampment on Franklin Avenue, working with community leaders from within that homeless community. So I urge you to take a similar approach in the Stevens Square neighborhood. Work with the community leaders, work with homeless people, because that will not only save money in investing in social services, but will restore dignity and humanity for every single person involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 28, Jeff.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jeff Nerbas, and I'm the board chair of the Camden Promise and pastor at Gethsemane Lutheran up at 47th and Colfax Avenue North. I am here to first say thank you for your leadership in providing money for the City Violence Prevention Program. We were the recipients of a $50,000 grant. As a result of those resources, we've been able to move to a community-oriented food shelf that's now giving out over 80,000 pounds of food a month, connecting with over 2,000 residents on the north side a month, and connecting with over 800 families. Our community meals now, meals that we gather on Wednesdays and on Saturdays, are being used as moments for our community to be in conversation around what the community can do to address violence. And we've invited our council member as well as our Minnesota State Attorney General. They have been a part of the conversation of the work that we've been doing. It's been marvelous. I really appreciate that work. I urge you to continue that. The issue with violence prevention programs is the time it takes to build trust, the time it takes to build relationship. That process is slow because there are a lot of people who have a great deal of mistrust about who the neighborhood is, how safe they feel, and what it is that they can actually do to make any formative change. The consensus that we have right now is that the people that are meeting are beginning to get to know one another. They recognize and they talk about their families and their kids and their life. And we're less predisposed to act in violent ways when we engage in deeper community. So I hope that we can continue the violence prevention program, increase those resources, and keep that work going as we continue into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 29, Joe.
Mujuani, Joseph Vital, Adjourned. Hello, my relatives. My name is Joseph Vital, and I'm here on behalf of the Native Peoples Caucus of the Minnesota DFL. In the proposed budget, the city's investment to combat our opioid crisis is just $400,000. Granted, it's an increase from $100,000, but this amount is laughable and quite honestly disrespectful, because in the same ink, the city is willing to invest $500,000 in Village Financial, a bank. Now, I'm not saying this bank should not receive the money, but it does highlight the seriousness our city is taking the opioid crisis, especially after 50-some recommendations from your opioid crisis task force. I recommend that we fully fund all those recommendations made by the task force with the exception of additional policing, and let me explain why. The mayor's budget is choosing to spend money to increase the number of police officers for an agency that has never been held accountable for the damages it has caused for our communities. Almost $2 million is to be spent in 2020 alone on the training and staffing of 8 new traffic and outreach officers. Instead, we should divert this money and future money into the Office of Violence Prevention, social workers, community block grants, and or the increased funding for our opioid crisis task force. Every night we see volunteers like Southside Harm Reduction who conduct street outreach to individuals struggling with addiction, or Little Earth who train their residents to administer Narcan to overdose victims. This is just to name a few, but the point is our communities are resilient and prepared to take on our challenges. They only ask that the city directly invest in them and give them the resources. It is time you trust our communities over the status quo. McWitch.
Thank you. Speaker 30, Batchel. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, council members. My name is Vachel Hudson, and I reside at 816 Portland Avenue, downtown Minneapolis, in a relatively new market rate, half vacant property. My comments are actually indifferent toward the proposal for affordable housing. Because I've had my own barriers in the past, I can understand exactly what many renters here in the city of Minneapolis are facing due to the lack of affordable housing. As a resident connections coordinator for AON, a nonprofit affordable housing here in Minneapolis, my job is to provide support in many community resources such as mental health, chemical dependency, financial literacy, budgeting, etc. In the 3 years I've been in my position, I've witnessed firsthand the positive impacts that a safe, affordable home can have on individuals and families, from adults enrolling into sobriety and GED classes and workforce trainings, to the youth improving in school attendance and school grades and things of that nature. As a member of the Minneapolis Urban League, I also work with people directly impacted with the lack of affordable housing. And with the new landlord ordinance that you all passed recently, this previous few months, there has been an influx of demand for more housing options for those who are previous felonies, who have misdemeanors and criminal histories that are still being denied due to the lack of supply for affordable housing. And the fact that you all are giving them opportunity to find housing, there still is not enough supply for them to find housing, and they shouldn't have to sit on waiting lists and wait for the downfall of the next man in order for them to find housing. There should be an adequate supply of affordable housing, which is why I bring up the location where I live being 50% vacant, and it's unacceptable. So I would definitely recommend you all taking another look at the affordable housing budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 31, Linda. Then we'll have Seneca, Cobbs, and Nicole. Welcome.
Hello, you guys. I'm here about my daughter. I'm Linda Reno, 5th Ward. My daughter's name is Shelinda Reno. She was found dead at the Loring Towers in downtown on Grant Street South. But all I know is I've been trying to find out what happened to her. They said it's undetermined, a medical examiner. But I've been calling and calling, leaving messages. Nobody has returned my call or anything. So I heard about this, I came down, but I have a criminal record since '79 that's been preventing me from even getting a job. I'm back in the 60s. I was raised through the riots and stuff, bats and stuff, all kinds of stuff. But I just wanted to say that I want to find out what happened to my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm sure, ma'am, if you want to leave your contact information with anyone, I'm sure any of us would be happy to follow up. Speaker 32, Seneca, then Cobbs, Nicole.
Hi. My name is Seneca Kruger. I'm here representing Southside Harm Reduction Services. Southside Harm Reduction Services is a grassroots mobile syringe exchange and Narcan distribution service in Minneapolis. We stand here with Reclaim the Block and the South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition and their demands that the city invest in communities instead of funding more police. I'm here to ask personally for you to get more creative, right? We don't need to be doing the same things that we know don't work. If police officers and adding more police officers worked, you wouldn't need to continue increasing funding for them, right? We know that they don't work. Let's get more creative, right? Let's start funding organizations like Southside Harm Reduction that are working from the ground up instead of the top down. We're outside in the streets every single week doing outreach with these communities that we serve. And these communities have been criminalized. Their bodies have been criminalized enough just as a result of being unhoused and having some issues with addictions. We don't need more police officers out on the streets criminalizing these bodies. These bodies need help. These bodies need services like Southside Harm Reduction. The $400,000 that has been earmarked for the opioid, to address the opioid epidemic, is not enough. It's ridiculous. Southside Harm Reduction, we're all volunteers. We're not asking for any money for ourselves. We go out on the streets every week. What we're asking for is just that we have the things that we need to provide the people that we serve the basic stuff, right? There's a lot of energy. I've seen lots and lots of people in here with lots of energy. I'm asking you, please fund that energy. Community energy is here and it's important. Make sure that people know it's important. Put money into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 33, Cobbs, then Nicole, Nick, and Jack.
Hey, I'm Cobbs. I'm a lifelong Minneapolis resident. I live in the Phillips neighborhood. I'm here with Southside Harm Reduction as well to advocate for funding community-led restorative solutions to the opioid crisis instead of more police. Police that are going to come enforce the same broken war on drugs policies that are dehumanizing, ineffective, and they increase the societal harm of the opioid crisis. As Seneca said, us and lots of other community groups and individuals have been out dealing with this for years. We were out giving naloxone and harm reduction supplies while up until about a year ago, the Minneapolis cops were fighting against even carrying naloxone with them. Yeah, the city has taken also some time to move towards funding this issue. And while the proposed $400,000 is a good step, it's kind of more of a symbolic gesture when you look at the scope of the crisis. It's also really small compared to the $8.4 million to hire 14 new cops. That 0.4 would be the amount that y'all are proposing for, or I guess that you're proposing for the opioid crisis. And it kind of just leaves all of us out here to divvy up the scraps. Police push people who use drugs further into the cycles of addiction and poverty. Harsh sentencing for nonviolent drug possession puts people in prison for years, releases them to a city where they can't find a job because they're a felon, can't find housing because they're a felon, and because there's nowhere to live for poor people in this city. And then there's no funding for harm reduction services. So what do you expect people to do? When they're not given options, that's where you get all the negative societal effects. That's where you get people coming out of prison, overdosing. More funding for cops takes away from trying to fix any of these problems, and it makes them worse.
Thank you. Speaker 34, Nicole.
Good evening, council members. My name is Nicole, and I am a school social worker at Nellie Stone Johnson Elementary School, which is located in Ward 5 of North Minneapolis. And I am here tonight to urge you to continue fully funding the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. This is my first year as a school social worker, but I have spent 4 years working with students in Minneapolis public schools, and I have seen how homeless and housing instability impacts our students and families on a daily basis. Last year at Nellie Stone Johnson, 20% of our student body experienced homelessness, and 45% had experienced homelessness at some point during their years as Minneapolis public school students. We know that even one experience of homelessness impacts a young person's ability to be successful at school and is the single greatest risk factor for not graduating high school. Stable Homes, Stable Schools is having a direct impact on families who desperately need support to remain stable. I became a school social worker because I wanted to support students and help them achieve success in school. Students who do not have housing outside of school struggle in school, and we know this. As a social worker, I wanted to be able to connect families to resources, and Stable Homes, Stable Schools is a unique program in allowing us to do this. Through Stable Homes, Stable Schools, we've been able to both house families who do not have housing, and I have seen the joy in students' faces when they talk about their own room that they get to go home to, and their own toys, and they have their own space to get away from their brother or their sister. And I have seen them be able to celebrate with their families and eat meals and be a family in their own home. Another unique aspect of the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program is that we also help families prevent eviction by providing funds for families who are at risk of losing their home. This is so critical in helping our students maintain the stability that a house provides for them. Our students are finding shelter at local shelters and other homes, but a house provides stability that our students desperately need to be successful in school. So I urge you to continue fully supporting the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 35, Nick. 36 is Jack. Then another Jack. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Nick. I'm here. My address is 2230 Marshall Street Northeast. I'm here with Southside Harm Reduction Services, and I'm also here to support Reclaim the Block in their move to fund communities, not cops. So yeah, I work with Southside Harm Reduction Services. I'm also a person who uses drugs, and I'm also a person in long-term recovery. And throughout my struggles with substance use, my life has been saved by people who use drugs, including being administered a dose of naloxone, which brought me back to life. The vast majority of overdose reversals are performed by people who use drugs and by their loved ones, not by police. There is a profound and well-founded mistrust of police among communities of people who use drugs, especially communities of color, indigenous communities, and LGBTQ folks. At Southside, we distributed over 10,000 doses of naloxone in the last year. It's hard to say how many lives have been saved, but I hear stories on a bi-weekly basis about people who were able to reverse an overdose in someone that they loved. So I'm just here to say, please fund communities instead of cops, and that includes funding deeply affordable housing, truly affordable housing, funding mental health services, funding grassroots harm reduction, violence prevention programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 36, Jack.
Hello, my name is Jack Loftus, and I live on 13th Avenue South. I work with Southside Harm Reduction Services, and I stand with Reclaim the Block and the South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition and their demands for the city to invest in communities instead of cops. Our communities are trying to address issues of public safety and the opioid overdose epidemic, but we need the resources to do it. According to the CDC, much of the decline in fatal overdoses around the country has been due to large-scale grassroots distribution of naloxone, like Southside Harm Reduction and various other organizations in the Twin Cities and individuals that do that work. Southside is out doing street outreach, doing deliveries of naloxone and safe use supplies, picking up syringes on the ground, teaching people how to use naloxone, teaching people how to be safer, and getting people connected to resources. The city plans an $8.4 million increase to the police department to hire 14 more cops. That's $600,000 per cop, compared to $400,000 to address the state's largest public health crisis. Southside Harm Reduction has spent less than $100,000 since 2017. We need things like sustainably funded syringe exchange programs, programs providing mobile medicine to bring healthcare out of clinics and into communities. We need drop-in centers, shelters that are accessible and culturally focused. We need safe use spaces, safe consumption spaces, which is a tried and true approach used all around the world to prevent overdose deaths and help access services. These are solutions that work and are achievable, and there are many community organizations who are ready and wanting to do the work. The city obviously has the resources to make them a reality. You have a chance to decide to take meaningful and intelligent steps to support and empower impacted communities in this crisis instead of continuing the same drug war policies that have failed for the last 50 years.
Thank you. Speaker 37, Jack.
Hello, I'm Jack Martin. I live in Ventura Village. I'm also with Southside Harm Reduction Services. And like Sheila said before me, Southside Harm Reduction Services is a mobile syringe exchange program that's run completely by volunteers. Everyone donates their time, as well as a lot of resources. I'm here today because I do not support the funding of 14 more cops. Instead, we should invest in people and communities. Before I continue, I want to recognize that we are all on indigenous lands. And in Minnesota, the land that I just said, indigenous people die at overdose rates higher than in West Virginia. That's the highest in the country. communities of color, indigenous communities, all suffer terrible overdose rates and health complications from injections. These effects echoes through communities of color in Minneapolis, and though these communities are incredibly strong and resilient, they need to be supported and not oppressed. We see people all over the city, and we are most likely the largest syringe exchange in the state in terms of number of needles distributed, people seen, naloxone vials given. This is not a position we should be in. These should be funded programs. They should be they should be funded programs, and this is a gap that was created because we aren't funding and supporting people experiencing houselessness, substance use. We aren't supporting healthcare and communities. It's not because we're underfunding cops. This sentiment is this sentiment, the idea that we are funding too many cops, is echoed throughout all the people that I see through Southside Harm Reduction Services. I haven't met a single person who said what they need is another cop on the street. Everyone has said that they need, that cops just tear their families apart, further stigmatize their existence, and leave people with charges they can't afford to deal with. All of that prevents safe and healthy recovery. Let's fund communities.
Thank you. Speaker 38, Kamara, Juliet, then Barbara, then Steve.
Good evening. My name is Kamara Julia Bashar. I use they, them pronouns. I'm an 8th Ward resident, a New York University Tisch School of the Arts drama grad, and I'm doing so well acting locally that as of last week, I acquired film and TV representation in New York and LA, so thank you. I'll be traveling a lot for work though, because when I moved to Minneapolis, I truly felt like I moved home. However, when I first arrived from my original state of New York by way of New York City, it wasn't for acting. It was because I was diagnosed with 4 different cognitive disorders, because the poverty I grew up in is a system that works, and because I knew I wasn't going to be able to access the care that I needed there. In my time making use of the excellent health and community care resources available here, I was able to become symptom-free from all 4 disorders 8 months into the second of 2 intensive therapy programs. It's been 3 years and I am still in remission. I saw 15 different care professionals, and they taught me a lot about de-escalating myself, but not one of them ever told me that it was a good idea while in crisis to engage with a paramilitary force, because it doesn't make sense. So to continue to use police as crisis response is outrageous and is causing more trauma. With over 1,000 untested rape kits over the course of 30 years, what would be prudent is a deep examination of MPD's misuse of current resources, not giving them more. The funding proposed for MPD should be directed towards hiring 2 full-time trans equity staffers, increasing access to mental health care, and community-led violence intervention and crisis response programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 39, Juliet.
Hi, my name is Juliet Dodson. I'm a 6-year PhD candidate at the University of Minnesota and adjunct professor at University of St. Thomas, and I'm also the creator and founder of Queer Science. I'm here to ask you today to find the money for 2 full-time trans staff faculty funded positions. What I'd like for you to do is, instead of sitting there and ignoring some of the major trans issues, I want you to actually look back at the cis communities around you, because the cis communities around us make up the majority of who is actually electing and voting for you in office. They have, over the past few years, in 2015, had the Minnesota State High School League make sure that there is trans protections for every single high school student who is transgender to come in, as well as voting for some of you representatives here. And also, most recently, we also had the ban on conversion therapy, because time and time again, the community around us, the cisgender community, has shown that they are here to defend and stand up for trans rights. They understand the inherent value, and they consume our art. They are part of us, and they see what we are worth, and they have been constantly supporting us. So as you're sitting there trying to debate whether or not you should be funding 14 more cops, I would love for you to try to find a thing that the community is actually valuing. Try and support some trans people, because they have been doing incredible and amazing things, such as the Trans Equity Summit. I moved here in 2014 from the South, As a new student here, I got to attend the very first ever Trans Equity Summit that allowed me the networks and the connections to actually go out and find and build my own networks and community organizations such as Queer Science. Without those kind of resources and keeping them persisting in our community, we need to have your support as well as from all these other cis people to make sure that the trans community stays together. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 41, Barbara.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Barb Draper. I live in Northeast Minneapolis. I believe that you believe the declaration you just passed, that there is a climate emergency. I'm proud of Minneapolis, led by you, to strive to lead in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And yet here, in the face of a climate emergency, the city reduces funding for fighting it. The city is already behind in meeting its greenhouse gas reduction goals. In fact, if it weren't for Excel's moves to renewables, the city wouldn't have many gains to talk about. So I am here to ask, to plead, to say, we need to put our money where our mouth is and fund efforts to conquer this climate emergency. As I understand it, the budget is $600,000 less than last year's spending allocation. Clearly, that needs to be restored. But in the face of an emergency, either we really think that it's an emergency or we don't. And if we do, then we need to double our efforts. This means going back up to the $2.8 million of last year and adding to that substantially. This is an emergency. You said it. Think the city is on fire. Think the Mississippi is flooding Minneapolis and residents are on rooftops. Think crops are failing and people are going hungry. Please, emergencies don't wait. Words won't do it. Resolutions need funding. Restore the $600 million and increase it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 42, Steve. Then Luke, Emma, and Mark.
Good evening. My name is Steve Sandberg. I live in East Phillips neighborhood, and I am here to ask you to return the $7 million to the water fund that was misappropriated, that blocked the project that our neighborhood has worked for over 4 years now. And I'd also like to uplift the person previously who said fund the energy. This would be a project that the city of Minneapolis would get awards for working with their underprivileged community. We have partners of Little Earth Housing. We have partners of a Somali group, Southeast Asia Families. We have Hispanic neighbors that have gone together, and if the city would get out of the way, we would have a facility that would be producing food, that would be training our youth. We have a cafe, a market, a bike repair and building shop, all run by a youth governing board. This is on our greenway in our community, in our transit-oriented hub. And what does the city do? First, some of you were on the council when they voted to take this money from all of our water funds and block our efforts to buy this by threatening eminent domain. And the city said that they were going to save this building. It's a 237,000 square foot, built in 1947 asset to our community that could incubate projects that are much needed in our green zone. It's an enterprise zone. You guys need to get out of the way and let us develop this on our green zone, on our greenway in our own neighborhood, like we have in particularly Council President's ward. There's been a lot of things that have been transformed from industrial to non-industrial. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Speaker 43, Luke. Welcome. Then Emma, Mark.
Thank you, Council President, members of the City Council. My name is Luke Grunman. I'm a member of Ward 4, and I'm also a lawyer at Legal Aid Society of Minneapolis, Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid. I'm here to talk about, we've heard about solutions and things that could use funding besides police and besides things that the city currently funds. One of those things is the right to counsel. Tenants facing eviction right now, the ones who get lawyers, fare a lot better. This council has already supported more lawyers for tenants facing eviction. Other cities in this country have gone to right to counsel as a matter of course. New York City, San Francisco, Philadelphia, LA. There are other cities that are continuing to move in that direction. Cleveland is one of them. Providing tenants lawyers is a way to keep them in the housing that they already have. We've heard time and time again today how housing is a solution to housing instability, that we could build more housing. Building more housing costs a lot of money. There is housing that people are in now. Tenants who face eviction, almost 80% of them are people of color. If they are represented by lawyers, 96% of them will either win or settle their cases. Most of them will stay in their homes, and they'll be there without eviction records after the case is over with. The right to counsel is a solution that makes sense. It makes economic sense. It doesn't cost a lot of money for the value that you get out of it. I'd strongly encourage the council to do that. There are other things that we can do to support tenants who are currently in their homes, but the right to counsel is one of them, and I think it's something that that council should consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 44, Emma. Emma can come back if she's here. Speaker 45, Mark.
Good evening. I'm Mark Schoenbaum from the 11th Ward, and I'm here tonight as a volunteer board member of nonprofit developer PRG and a member of Make Homes Happen. Last year, you made a $40 million down payment on an affordable housing trust fund. This year's proposed $31 million takes a step backward on this critical priority. I urge you to budget at least $40 to $50 million this year, if not more. Budgeting substantial general fund money for housing each year is hard, but it has to continue until you identify funds for a permanent, dedicated source for affordable housing. Other cities have solved this puzzle, and the report you got on the city's role was too pessimistic. Where state law is a genuine roadblock, we'll advocate with you at the legislature for solutions. But in the meantime, we can't go backwards. Creating affordable homes is essential to the success of the 2040 framework, inclusionary zoning, and all the other goals you've heard about here tonight. PRG, where I'm on the board, has created affordable housing in Minneapolis for over 40 years and counseled families to buy homes or save their home from foreclosure. Every day brings more requests to PRG and other nonprofits than can be met. I'm especially proud, as you just heard, of the city's role in removing slumlord Steve and Friends and helping stabilize those buildings. Investments have to be made all along the affordable housing spectrum, from efforts like the Friends situation to stabilizing the homeless and developing new affordable homes. The housing budget you adopt in a couple of days here will affect all these goals. So don't go backwards. Keep your leadership going and approve $50 million for affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 46, Renee. Renata. I was gonna.
I guessed as much when I saw you talking. My name is Renata Willer, and I live in Ward 6 in the Seward neighborhood. I am here this evening to ask every council member to support Reclaim the Block and to fund 2 full-time permanent trans equity staff in the 2020 budget. Because of the investment in dedicated trans equity staff already, many exciting strides have been made this year. The Trans Equity Summit was the largest, most accessible, and the most community planned summit yet. The appointed board application was updated, and many collaborative partnerships were formed. We can capitalize on this important momentum if the city chooses to invest in it further. Funding trans equity work is inherently valuable in itself, but also as integral violence prevention strategy. Funding trans equity work and educating people about transphobia will keep trans folk and others safe. Real safety can only come when we as a community decide to work through conflict and address harm without relying on punitive systems, marginalization, and condemnation. I've been working in the homeless service community for the past 4 years, and I've never had one of my clients say we need more police on the streets. And in fact, many of my clients have experienced trauma inflicted by the police. My clients' asks are for clean, affordable housing, stigma reduction, more access to mental health supports, better public transportation, and lower barrier resources. When you talk about adding more police to the streets for safer communities, I wonder whose safety are we talking about? My clients and so many others need us to break free of the punitive mindset we are stuck in. For these and many more reasons, I ask every council member to support increased permanent funding for trans equity work and the Reclaim the Black asks. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Speaker 47, Donna, then Ariana.
Good evening, council members. My name is Donna Che. I live at 2213 25th Avenue South in the Seward neighborhood. I'm a student at the University of Minnesota as a global studies major, hoping to become an environmental educator. In 2015, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. If you haven't heard of it, it's a severe mental health disorder that it is explained most easily as a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. One day, around 4 years ago, at the peak of my illness, I became actively suicidal, aggressive, and violent towards my father to the point where he didn't know what to do and called the cops. The cops handcuffed me and told me that I had the choice of going to jail or the hospital. And not being in the right state of mind, I told them repeatedly to take me to jail. They ended up sending me to the psych ward, but I imagine that might not have been the case if I was Black or brown or indigenous. I'm here to ask that the city put money towards a mobile mental health crisis intervention team, such as the one in Eugene, Oregon, which answers calls like suicide interventions and overdoses. This mental health team, called CAHOOTS, which stands for Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets, is an alternative response to the police and is also starting in Denver, Colorado, and being considered by city leaders from Oakland, California, Olympia, Washington, and New York City. A CBS article published in October of this year reports that a recent study found 25 to 50% of fatal officer-involved shootings involved someone with a severe mental illness. I speak on behalf of those that struggle with mental illness and plead that you consider budgeting money for mental health response teams that are better suited to handle conflicts that arise as mental health crises, which cops are not adequately trained to handle. I want Minneapolis to invest in real safety by budgeting for these mental health teams instead of hiring 14 more cops, which will save people from going to jail when they should be going to the hospital and perhaps even save a life. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 48, Ariana. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ariana. I live at 3232 Clinton Avenue. I'm here this evening in support of Reclaim the Block. Many of you know me also. I'm an organizer with Inquilinos Unidos por Justicia, United Renters for Justice. And this evening, I wanted to talk about, unfortunately, many of our members couldn't be here, but as you know, we work with thousands of renters, low-income renters of color in the city, and never, not once, have I heard from any of them that they want more cops. We had a meeting where we discussed some of the alternatives to increase in policing that could better support our renter community. And I think there's too many to name, which I think is telling. But some of the ones that I wanted to mention, I know that there's never enough money somehow, but we need more money for efforts like tenant opportunity to purchase. For right to counsel, as my friend Luke with Legal Aid mentioned, and also wanted to talk about increased funding for trans equity staff members, since that effort has already been doing amazing work in our communities, and we need to see more of that and more efforts. So on behalf of the renters of Inquilinos Unidos, we want to ask you to not hire more cops and fund solutions and fund community instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 49, Nikki. Then we'll have Janet, Felicia, and Danny.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council, Mayor Fry. My name is Nikki Mabry. I had the pleasure of once living in this beautiful city. I now work here as the Community Engagement Manager at People Serving People at 614 3rd Avenue South, Councilmember Fletcher's district. All right. So as a community manager, engagement manager at our region's largest family shelter, every day I get to see the fierce resilience of children, youth, and families. It's beautiful. And every day I also get to see the impacts of over-policing, systemic violence, and deep trauma from contact with the police state. A beautiful elder said once, we have to believe that revolution is possible, and we have to act like it every day. I want this beautiful city to invest in the authentic safety of our families and community by funding violence prevention programs and youth homeless services. Our community deeply needs real solutions to the opioid crisis, and it's urgent. We don't need more police. I want to thank you. I know that every one of you ran for office to save lives and to support the dignity of all of our peoples. Thank you, and may the ancestors be with you in this work.
Thank you. Speaker 50, Janet. Welcome.
Hello, Council and Mayor. My name's Janet Court. I live in Powderhorn neighborhood. I'm here on behalf of the Mayor's Advisory Council on Aging, which I am now the Vice Chair of. Thank you so much for your support of seniors programs and your continued commitment to the Aging Action Plan, which you approved, and also ARP approved it, and the UN approved it. The visiting, also I want to thank you for the visiting nurse program that's also been a godsend to so many. The older adults currently comprise 25% of the city's population. It's also the fastest growing population segment. So in the future, there'll be additional needs to be considered for your older citizens. I know there's so many pressures, so I thank you for considering as you work on this next year's budget and the budgets in the future, our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 53. Alicia. Oh, already made. Thank you. Okay, Speaker 54, Danny. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Danny Schwartzman. I live at 2717 Irving Avenue South, and I own Common Roots Cafe, and I'm the co-chair of the board of the Main Street Alliance in Minnesota. And I'm here today primarily to focus on the CPED budget. I think there are some good things in the budget. I'm happy to see the Commercial Development Acquisition Fund, and I think the changes to the Great Streets program in the cultural quarters is a good move and expansion. But I'm disappointed that there's not more. I think that what we need in the city is a complete rethinking of how we do economic development, especially as it focuses on small business. Our existing programs seem completely inadequate for confronting the needs that we have in our communities, especially in light of the equity problems we face in our city. And I think this budget mostly preserves existing programs. And these existing programs have been around for a lot of years with limited impact and very, very limited outreach. And we know that the programs that exist primarily work best for those with access to capital, both financial capital and social capital. And if we care about equity and really mean it, we really need to do more than just that and create new programs that are innovative, that help people all across the city, but especially in those neighborhoods that have the least economic capacity, to start the businesses that they need to succeed, to grow the neighborhoods in a positive way, and to have place-based development programs that focus on economic development in people and not just property, and focus on small businesses growing and launching in ways that improve entire communities and especially individuals across the city. And I think we can do that with new ideas and new initiatives, but there are few in the budget. The limited ones that are there are good starts, but the Commercial Acquisition Fund is focused on large development. And so much of CPED's time is focused on supporting large developers and large development. Some of that's out of necessity, but our communities certainly need more. Most small business owners don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know the programs that exist. They don't feel like they have the partners they need in City Hall, and I hope we can do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 55. Speaker 55. Tene Wells. Okay, if you're here, you can come back. Speaker 56, Patrick. Then Lisa Donald. Then Juana.
Hello, my name is Patrick Straw. I live at 2103 2nd Avenue South, Minneapolis. I believe that's the Whittier neighborhood. I am here in support of affordable housing in Minneapolis, the Minnesota Make a Home Coalition Alliance Housing. I'm 63 years old, and I was doing pretty good up to a few years ago when I had a stroke. And if it wasn't for me being on a fixed income and stuff like that, I can't afford what the rents are right now. And affordable housing is important to me, or I'd be in a nursing home. I wouldn't be living independently like I am. And that's what I got to add. I just hope I hope the budget is approved for funding for affordable housing, because there's a lot more people like me out there, and we need help. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Speaker 57, Lisa. And if anyone is here and not in the room, you can always come back. 58, Donald. 59, Felix. I think maybe had this gone earlier. Juana, 60. Speaker 61, Emilio. Veronica left. I think some of these people went earlier. 63, Madeline. Welcome.
I am here, but the two following me aren't, Andy and Jane Swift. Great. Hi, my name is Madeline Farley. I live in Seward, and I do not support the budget as proposed. I'm here on behalf of the Sex Workers Outreach Project, as well as standing with Reclaim the Block and everything they're working for here. So former police chief Harto ordered an end to massage parlor raids because police were taking too many liberties, which is a really fancy way of saying sanctioned rape. And we don't need more police officers. We need police officers to be doing their jobs. Which is not a big ask, I don't think. They need to be community members. 14 more police officers is just 14 more people to be terrified of when you go outside. They're not anyone that we understand to be an addition to a super effective team. If we want 14 more police officers, we should replace 14 ineffective police officers. So I think we all have heard about the recent discovery of rape kits and the well-established history of disregarding sexual violence and cases of sexual violence. And I think that just speaks more and more to how the police can't just have more funding. They can't just have more officers. They need to be specifically trained and fixed our police department needs to be fixed because it is not functioning as it needs to be, and just adding more people and training them in the same way that we have been is not sufficient. So yes, how much time do I have left? Oh great. There's a couple more things I'd like to touch on in terms of affordable housing. The DC Police Chief Peter Newsham says it really well when he says we can't arrest our way out of prostitution. We have to respond to poverty. We have to respond to things that are causing people to turn to these non-traditional forms of employment. We need to allocate more than we already have to affordable housing. We need to allocate far more than $400,000 to the opioid epidemic, which is astronomically larger than that, and any police force needs that we have. We need recovery programs, syringe exchange programs. We need funding to do something, working with people like Southside Harm Reduction, who've trained me, and I have passed out syringes in my neighborhood of Seward, and I feel like if we can't have police officers who would do that, we can't fund them. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 66, Sheila, then Lee, then Pete, and Daphne.
Hello, council members, mayor. I came to speak about this point where the mayor is saying we need more officers to build relationships with people on the streets. And I just wanted to bring a little bit to light from the Minneapolis Police Department's YouTube channel about what building relationships looks like. So I don't know if you know about the Police Young Explorers program. This is a screenshot from the Minneapolis Police YouTube. I'll hold it up for the crowd here too. Oh yeah.
I don't think it's on, but we can also pass it around.
I have another one, which is a different picture. So this is the Minneapolis Police Explorers program. This picture is from May of this year, showing a young child with an assault rifle. If you watch the whole video, you'll get to see children doing SWAT raids with each other, learning how to arrest each other, and just smiling the whole time. And I also included on the bottom of this one that's on the screen, the Minneapolis City Council's public safety priority, which you all decided on, which the mayor kind of missed in his budget. Which is to increase the number of Black, Indigenous, and people of color ages 10 to 24 living in higher violence areas of Minneapolis who participate in quality youth development programs. So I would argue that spending $8.5 million on police and how much on youth development is probably not meeting this goal, and you all luckily have the power to change things now. So I would urge you to consider what training in more police officers, I'll add this one to the screen, would look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 67, Lee. Welcome.
President Bender, members of the council, I concur with the Energy Vision Advisory Committee's request to amend the 2020 budget by restoring the $590,000, which had been in the 2019 budget, laid out in this letter here, which I could submit, and the climate emergency declaration from the Peace Committee on Monday, plus this report right here means we cannot afford to invest less than last year. And I have looked through the spreadsheet on the franchise fee enabled programming right here, where 10 of the budget items were fully spent, but also the whole suite of the green cost share programs ran out of money, even though they gave Minneapolis residents and businesses $40 million in energy savings by leveraging less than $4 million in city funds. And the Green Business Cost Share had to close its applications for funding in February because it got oversubscribed that quickly. And yet I see in the spreadsheet that it gets $171,000 less in next year's budget. And I know the energy disclosure ordinances have increased demand for home energy audits and improvements by a factor of 10, so it comes as no surprise that the home energy assessment and project buy-downs were oversubscribed. despite getting extra funds from the Realize program, which did not proceed. And if this increased demand is not matched with increased net funds, then the long waiting list and people not being served next year will be the reality that we face, at least for next year. And at the most recent Clean Energy Partnership Board meeting, I saw that Xcel Energy had refused to take the next steps on inclusive financing, and also CenterPoint offloaded the work of program design onto the city, even though they handed out this soap made from captured CO2. So it is important that the city be able to fund the technical support to get an inclusive financing project off the ground, and I'm wearing purple in support of the Trans Equity Project or budget and Reclaim the Block. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 68, Pete. Then Daphne, then Tabitha.
Hello, my name is Pete Gamatis, and I live in Ward 3 in Northeast Minneapolis. I'm a member of the Racial Justice Network, and I fully support the recommendations of Reclaim the Block. I've had the pleasure of serving on the Council's 911 work group that was put together this fall. And I come to share a lot of the learnings that I had from that work. First, there's a tremendous opportunity to respond to 911 calls without police. Specifically, people impacted by the opioid crisis and people having mental health crises. The chief has talked about the fact that 1/12 of police resources are used fighting the opioid crisis. Do we really need police officers being the first persons to attend to these people? This is not an effective approach. Second, there's been a lot of talk about priority 1 calls and them not getting responded to. We first need to look at what the definition of priority 1 calls are and reevaluate that. The theft of a candy bar can be considered a priority 1 call if it happens within 10 minutes of someone calling the police department. Is that really a priority 1 call? Third, there needs to be ongoing investments in solutions that don't require a police presence. There's so many opportunities to do that. It's going to be a lot harder work than hiring more police officers, and we need you to do this hard work. Madam Chair and the Council, we need you to do this work. Mayor Fry, we need you to do this work. We should join St. Paul in choosing to fund the community and add violence prevention instead of more police. And finally, again, I fully support all the recommendations of Reclaim the Block. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 69, Daphne. Welcome.
Good day. My name is Daphne Brown, and I'm a community supporter, and I'm a member of Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar Clark. And I've just now started getting involved, coming to meetings and events and just trying to get plugged in. And I've been seeing how a lot of organizers are constantly coming forth with their demands, with our demands for safety and making change. And all I'm seeing is you all giving us the runaround. You're not really trying to put forth the effort to help us. So I'm here to support Reclaim the Block. And I want to let you guys know that we demand our police accountability councils. We won't be told no anymore. All of these reforming and talks of training, and we definitely don't need no more police officers out here. We don't need all of that. We need our police accountability councils. Everything that they're asking you for, I don't care what the money is for, what the funding is for, give it to them. Give it to them because we need it out here. And don't forget, we need our police accountability council. We're coming for it. We want y'all's support. We need your support, but we need it more than we need your support. You can get up and get out, and we can get somebody in that is gonna support us. We just tired of it. I haven't even been here that long, and I'm sick and tired of it. So yeah, work with us so we don't have to work against you, okay? Now, I did send out a sign-up sheet for Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar Clark. If anyone of y'all want to sign it, let me know. And I would like for all of you to sign it so we can work together. That's what the goal is, to work together to resolve these issues with you guys. And it's enough of y'all that you can start discussing it amongst yourselves to help them, help us, and help you. You have family, you have friends out there that's not up under you all the time. They're traveling, they're in society going here and there. Do you want them to be a statistic? We don't want ours to be a statistic either. So if y'all could just listen to us and put forth the effort, we can resolve these issues. But if you can't, we'll resolve them anyway.
Thank you, ma'am. Speaker 70, Tabitha. Let's see here. Please feel free to come if you're here and in the other room. Speaker 71. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Ewan Scotto, and I live in the Whittier neighborhood in Ward 10, and I'm here today in support of Reclaim the Block. I work in reproductive and sexual health as a patient advocate, and in my role, I've seen firsthand the effects of police criminalizing young people. So in my work as a patient advocate, I act as a resource to patients who come in, most of whom are young adults and teens who need extra support, so referrals, education, or assistance navigating our services. But I also frequently serve as a stopgap measure if front desk, nurses, or providers suspect there is coercion at play when a young person comes in for our services. Earlier this year, a young woman ended up in my office who had just been detained at her high school by the police. Without going into details, the police had been called for her benefit, but when she didn't want their help and tried to push past the officers to get back to class, she told me she was shoved against a wall, handcuffed, and told she couldn't go back to class. Instead, the community police liaison brought her to our clinic and told the front desk she needed to get on birth control. When I asked her why she was there at the clinic, she told me she didn't know. When I asked her if she wanted to get on birth control, she said no. To reiterate, police were called to a minor school, supposedly for her safety. In the process, detained her when she refused, put her in handcuffs, and against her will brought her to a medical facility without the consent of her or her parents. Why are police putting our children in handcuffs and interfering in their sexual and reproductive health? If I didn't know the history of policing sexual abuse or the medical mistreatment of young women of color in our country, I would be surprised. Because I do know these histories, I am not surprised, but I am outraged. Our young people deserve better. In my office, I am constantly tasked with referring young people to sexual and intimate partner violence organizations, mental health care providers, and housing advocates with wait lists that are so long that young people can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. These are the organizations that I trust serving our young people, and they are who need more capacity with the work that is so desperately needed. Fund our communities and not more cops. They are not here to serve our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 73, Keith.
Hi, thank you, Chair and Council, Mayor Fry. I'm here tonight to call for you to reconsider the funding of 14 additional police officers. I'd like to see a dysfunctional, broken police department fixed before you throw some patches on there and try to send it out into the community. This police department has done great harm to the community. I know that you've made progress in the mental health response. However, I'd still like to see less police involvement. I certainly don't want police officers as the first responders to mental health crisis. Until Travis Jordan doesn't happen anymore in our city, no more. No, not one more officer. Secondly, I see today in the paper that you've got an officer that was terminated at the chief's discretion, and now he's going to be brought back in. A cop who beat a handcuffed, intoxicated man. Oddly enough, 30 years ago, the city of Minneapolis had to pay out over $1 million for Officer Mike Sorrow, who also beat a handcuffed person who was being detained. So in 30 years, nothing has changed in the broken, dysfunctional culture. 30 years ago, the police department ignored rape kits and allowed 1,700 of them to go unprocessed. That's 5 mayors, 5 chief of police, multiple city council members, and it's time to draw the line and say, no more. We're not going to do it. Not one more officer until you fix the dysfunctional department. It is broken. When Bob Kroll is told, you will not do this, and he goes and does end runs around the chief, that's not who we want for our representatives. And the community is telling you in great numbers that they feel unsafe, they feel harassed, they feel discriminated against. When the city of Minneapolis is ranked as the 4th worst place in America for people of color to live, that's unacceptable. You've got the chance to do better, and it's time to do it.
Thank you. 74, Jessica.
Oh, I'm 74. I thought I was 72. I got confused. Okay. Hello, my name is Jessica Garraway. I live on 1726 James Avenue North. I live blocks away from where the 4th Precinct uprising happened in 2016 because of the murder of Jamar Clark by the MPD. I also live right down the street from Broadway Avenue, where almost every store on the strip is occupied by a police officer. I moved to Minneapolis 4 years ago, and where I grew up in Iowa, this was not commonplace. There was not this level of police presence. This is not something that I should be desensitized to, yet a sense of normalcy has already taken place within me. I also work as a substitute teacher in Minneapolis public schools. The youth I teach should not have to live in heavily occupied police neighborhoods. They also should not be forced to take classes that do not prepare them for a changing world in the throes of climate change. Instead of more police, we should be getting ready for the havoc climate change will cause them. Money should instead be put into youth initiatives that seek to train youth in green technological careers. Instead of paying for 14 cops, let's invest in mental health professionals that work with youth. Instead of paying for 14 cops, let's put that money in programs that uplift and invest in our communities and do not subject our youth to further police occupation. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 75, Patrick, then Scott, then Joe.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Alcorn. I live at 2520 Harriet Avenue. I am here tonight to support Reclaim the Block. There's not a single person in this room that doesn't want to live in a safe city, but I think it's time that we have a more honest conversation about what safety means. For me, safety means not having community members sleeping on the streets. It means not worrying about if your boss is stealing money out of your paycheck. It means not being afraid to call for when your family member's in a mental crisis because you do not know how the police are going to respond. For me, it means being able to access services if you are struggling with addiction. Stable homes, stable jobs, and stable health care. That's what's going to lead to more safety, not more cops. For decades, we have tried increasing the size of our police force, and I don't know how it could be more clear that that's not going to work. For the most marginalized in our city, for those who are the least safe, more cops doesn't create a sense of safety, but one of fear. We can't afford to invest in more police officers when there still has been no justice for those who have been murdered, when there's been no accountability for the countless community members that have been profiled, harassed, and brutalized. Honestly, adding more police is a cowardly response to complex problems. So I ask you, have some courage, fund our communities, not cops.
Thank you. Speaker 76, Scott, then Joe, then I'm not sure.
Okay. My name is Scott Engel. I live at 3748 19th Avenue South. I'm here representing Our Streets Minneapolis, and I wanted to thank the mayor and the city council for including additional funds this year for sidewalk snow and ice clearance at corners. A lot of the council members and the mayor have heard from Our Streets and me personally before. As a disabled person, it's very hard to get around in this city for months upon months of the year. I know the city's been making efforts to make improvements, and this additional funding is going to make a big difference. You're not done. So every year, keep working on it. Do something new every year. We just had snow this past weekend. It's not great still. People in wheelchairs, the disabled. We just heard that 25% of citizens in our city are seniors, and it's growing. Children, able-bodied adults, it's still hard to get around, trying to walk, try to catch a bus, climbing over snow piles. There's a lot more that can be done. I just want to mention one other thing is our streets, at our Open Streets events this past summer, we collected more than 1,500 postcards from people who wanted better sidewalk snow and ice clearance. This is during the summertime, so people did not forget about the winter. So thank you again for including those funds. I think it is going to make a difference, and thank you very much.
Thank you. 77, Joe. Feel free to come back. 78. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Sam. I use he, him pronouns, and I work with the Southside Harm Reduction Services. Southside Harm Reduction Services is a grassroots mobile syringe exchange and Narcan distribution service in Minneapolis. We stand with Reclaim the Block and the South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition and their demands for the city to invest in communities instead of funding more police. The city's response to the opioid crisis should seek to support, not punish people who are impacted. And this starts with making sure people have access to basic needs, human rights. That includes deeply affordable housing, jobs and wages, access to space for practice in cultural and spirituality, transportation, supplies to use drugs safely, and naloxone. Youth homelessness services, mental health response teams, enforcing wage theft laws, increasing restroom access as the South Minneapolis Public Safety Coalition and Reclaim the Block demand, as well as funding grassroots harm reduction activities. These are solutions that will have real, immediate, and lasting impacts on the lives of people. Cities have been trying to address these issues using policies over more than 50 years of failed drug war policies. We know how that has turned out. There are issues of access to resources in our communities, not of crime. If this city wants to invest in crime prevention, address homelessness, and respond to the opioid overdose epidemic, it can start by ensuring people have access to basic needs and human rights in our city. I hope Minneapolis decides to end this cycle. Also, please consider safe consumption sites. We don't need any more overdoses deaths. I want to bring up this one last statistic of the last 2 months in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, of how many overdoses we've had. In October of 2019, we had 99 overdose calls in, and a minimum of 6 deaths. In November of 2019, there were 86 overdose calls, and at least 3 deaths confirmed. No one deserves to die of an overdose death because they use drugs. No one deserves to die because they use drugs.
Thank you. 79, Thalia, then Dan, Willa, Sean. We probably have about a dozen people signed in. If you want to speak and haven't, feel free to talk with the clerk. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Talia Reyes. I live at South 9th Street in the Stewart neighborhood, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm here today in solidarity with Reclaim the Block and Seytoul to advocate against the hiring of 14 police officers and specifically ask the council to support ending, not reducing or alleviating, but ending homelessness and wage theft in Minneapolis. First, I support the funding of at least 3 more investigators in the Labor Standards Enforcement Division of the Minneapolis Department of Civil Rights. Relatedly, most people facing homelessness are forced into the situation in part due to financial reasons. Thus, the rest of my comments will focus on experiences with police and homelessness. I'm appalled but not surprised at how often I witness and am a part of police harassment in the city against me and my unhoused neighbors. Something glaringly obvious only living in the city for 18 months. Whether they are sitting on benches, in public parks, chatting with me when I check in. Police regularly intimidate, curse at, follow without cause, and abuse unhoused community members. But as been said tonight, more police cannot solve a housing problem. So I'm asking the council to fund housing based on a housing first model. The Department of Housing and Housing and Urban Development's Housing First program has demonstrated in cities across the country, including Minneapolis, that providing housing to people experiencing homelessness and then providing them the social and community services they need helps people be successful in rehabilitation programs, job retention, and job stability, and housing stability, We can take this approach and implement it across the city, but only if we're willing to make this a part of mandatory funding. I ask you to stand with us. Let's work together in supporting our unhoused neighbors by ending homelessness and funding social, mental health, and medical services, not 14 more cops. Fund communities, not cops. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 80, Dan.
Madam Chair, council members, my name is Dan Collison. I'm a resident of the 13th Ward, and I work in Wards 3, 5, 6, and 7 as Executive Director of the Easttown Business Partnership, New Loop Partners, and lead pastor of First Covenant Church that hosts a nightly shelter for those facing homelessness, single adults, as well as developing 169 units of tax credit affordable housing. I'm speaking today in general support of the proposed 2020 budget as Mayor Frey has outlined it, and would like to highlight a few specific important items that are also important to my organizations. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund recommendation is important. The downtown community welcomes the continued investment of the new market rate housing options, but we're very concerned that there are more affordable and middle income affordable options that are included in the new product development. The preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing is critically important, and we applaud the mayor's attention to the realities connected to access to affordable housing, such as tenant rights and the structural ladders for those who face homelessness into long-term housing options. And as leaders and organizations committed to both learning, doing better, and increasing advancement of our city center to be more inclusive, we applaud the mayor's commitments to economic inclusion that seeks the implementation of specific solutions that unmake the legacy of institutionalized and systematic exclusion of Black, Indigenous, and New Americans of color. And I'm inspired by some comments that CPED and other forms of economic investment be targeted to the small business communities that can revitalize and bring more wealth to all of our neighborhoods, and in a special attention to those businesses that are owned by women, individuals of color, and LGBTQ businesses. And finally, the vitality and increased investment of growing as a city, more people working and recreating and recreating in downtown is making a difference for our vitality, and as such we need continued and increased investments in all services to meet the needs of a growing city and urban core, which would include the mayor's proposed investment in public safety initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. 81, Willa.
Hi, my name is Willa Childress, and I live on South 5th Avenue in the Central neighborhood. I want to tell you about a recent experience that I had with Minneapolis police officers. Last month, there was a very serious car accident in front of my house involving 3 young women. These were people who were probably no more than 20 years old. The police officers on site did not treat any of these victims with the basic courtesy I would expect a trained professional to give young people who are experiencing trauma and shock. One of the women was very seriously injured and needed to be rushed to the hospital. One of her friends was also injured, but less severely, and she couldn't decide whether or not to go with one friend to the hospital or stay with the other on site. She had initially decided to go and then changed her mind. Hearing this, one of the police officers turned to her and said, "Let me be clear, there will be no lying from this point on. Do you hear me?" The police officers continued to behave in an upsetting and punishing manner throughout the proceedings, both to the victims and to the members of our block who had gathered. After watching Minneapolis police fail at what I know is a very simple part of their jobs, responding in a car accident, I feel very unsafe knowing that people with mental health crises and others who need professional de-escalation services often have no one to turn to except law enforcement officers.
I am also appalled to know that young people and kids in my community and many communities across Minneapolis are treated like these women were, with no compassion and with this assumption that they have done something criminally wrong when they haven't. Instead of hiring 14 more cops, I am calling on you to invest in mental health response services for 911 calls and investing in services for youth like homelessness services that keep them sheltered from police and supported so they can thrive. These strategies are tried and true, with other cities setting an example for moving forward. Please follow their lead. Thank you.
Thank you. 83, Alyssa. Feel free to come back if you've stepped out. 84 went earlier. 85.
84 actually is me, Adonis.
Oh, you traded.
Yeah, I actually didn't. That was somebody else that made a mistake.
Oh, no worries. Hi, welcome.
How's it going? My name is Adonis Williams. I actually started my own mental health business last year. And I live on the south side, but shout out to the north side. And I'm actually here to represent Chicago. So let me talk about Chicago for a little minute. It's going somewhere, trust me. First of all, I'm sure you guys have noticed that a lot of black people have been coming here from Chicago, right? From places like Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, all places where black people have historically done very well for themselves. But what ends up happening in those cities over time is they become either systematically or physically destroyed in such cases like in Oklahoma. And I know we all know about white flight, but I'm sure you guys haven't known about the phenomenon of black flight, where black people are made to look like black people are the problem. So they leave their cities because they're afraid of their own people, and they're discouraged from building and committed to building their own people in their own city and in their own city. And then ironically, they move to Minnesota, where it's so easy to find work, but they become homeless. Everybody's up here talking all this. I'm sorry. What? This is gonna be on C-SPAN or something? My bad. I don't need to be cussing or nothing. But anyway, like I'm saying, like they come up here and we're told about affordable housing and stuff like that. But affordable for who? Let's talk about low-income housing, because why does it matter if you have a job and it's so easy to get a job when you're just going to end up homeless? And a lot of these housing entities do not serve for the people who end up using these services. Instead, they serve to promote what I call the Minnesota homeless industry. So I need people to focus more on these entities that seem like, oh, it's so many things, the land of 10,000 nonprofits. There's so much help for everybody out here. But why is everybody stuck in these systems? And don't just worry about the funding. Worry about where the funding is going, because there's a lot. I don't want to throw no shade to no specific groups, because some of them groups have representatives come up to speak here. But there's a lot of places that I've used, like I'm gonna just say some names to be honest. Aeon, Catholic Charities, a lot of these shelters, they are scams, and it's not necessarily the people who work there, but sometimes it is. But sometimes a lot of the people are good people, but they work in the damaged system. So I just want to say. R.I.P. to Fred Hampton, free Larry Hoover, free Mumia, free Fred Hampton, free Jeff Fort. And at the end of the day, this is a microcosm in Minnesota for the removal. Everybody talk about the removal of the middle class. I saw that here when I moved up here 4 years ago. Y'all want a system where it's a bunch of people who have a whole bunch of money, and then everybody else who doesn't have money. It's not like you don't have a lot of money, you don't have anything. You're out here homeless and begging for somebody to give you something. So, yeah, I see Jake the Snake left, but I hope y'all tell him what I said.
Thank you. All right, I think I missed 82, which is Sean. Sorry about that. If I missed anyone else, just let me know. Wave or come up.
Hello, Councilmember Bender and everyone. Thanks for your patience. It's so great to see how much wisdom people have been generating tonight. I'm really excited about all the solutions for the opioid crisis, homelessness. I live near Hiawatha Lake, and we've had a bit of an encampment underneath the bridge there all summer. I'm here with the Minneapolis Green Teams Coalition. So we have neighborhoods across the city that are working on climate solutions, and we're so proud of the council having the climate emergency declaration, the sustainable building policy. So we're really excited about the leadership for both our Twin Cities and the state on climate solutions. So we're asking the council to support the same level of funding for the Sustainability Office and the Climate Investment Fund for next year. We don't want to have a decrease in funding, because we'll have a huge amount of increase of need for the home energy loans, because we'll have like 5,000 energy audits this year with the new Truth in Housing. We're going to have a giant amount of demand for both the business cost share and the home weatherization. So, and then in addition to keeping the budget constant, we would like you to explore doubling the franchise fee next year. We really need like $10 billion a year to really invest in all the climate solutions that are needed. So looking at whether parking fees or other things that can be used to invest in going for a low carbon future. And then we'll be gathering up all the suburban Hennepin County cities on January 22nd, so the suburban Hennepin County cities can work with Minneapolis on achieving your goals with Excel Energy and with the legislature. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. So we're on 85. Brittany?
Hello, I'm here standing with Reclaim the Block and wearing purple for trans equity, and I just want to ask you to support community. You've been hearing all the wisdom and all the creativity. Please show that you believe in your community by funding community and not cops. Funding can go towards Dakota, Ojibwe, and Anishinaabe people being stewards of their own ancestral lands, and paying them to hear what their thoughts are, and affordable and safe housing, like you've heard, supporting small businesses, ways to welcome people back who've been incarcerated. And I want to speak to you about how we can start practicing in the moment how to have prevention. I used to volunteer at a place helping people learn how to practice consent and being with survivors who have survived sexual assault. And so I used to talk to people about how we can practice consent and we can prevent sexual assault in little interactions of like asking consent for a hug, and little ways we can practice that and get it into our bodies, of that knowledge of how to practice consent. And so I just want to remind all of you, you can practice that by listening to communities' no's, that no, we don't want more police, and listen to our yes, of yes, we want community-led resources. And I also want to remind everyone that I remind people when teaching about consent is that silence isn't consent, and to think about who couldn't be speaking here tonight and why, such as anyone who needs an elevator. The elevators are not working tonight, and so we couldn't hear from people who possibly need an elevator. Thank you so much for practicing consent together with what you choose to say yes and no to, and if you're listening to our yeses or our nos.
Thank you. Speaker 86, Casey.
Hi, I'm Casey. I live in and work in Whittier, and I have the pleasure to work at a nonprofit in Whittier, and I work with people that are experiencing homelessness. And I see every day that I work downtown Minneapolis as well, and I see every day it's getting better, and I'm seeing all these things, but I still see my neighbors getting citations for drug and livability crimes, and then turn into warrants, which then turn into jail time, and which then leaves people back on the streets, square one, living with existing trauma they've already had and drug addiction, which is already pre-existing before all this started, and trying to help this person is really hard when my hands are tied, when there is no housing for these people. We don't have deeply affordable housing for these people, which really is really hard for me to see, and hard for me to even advocate for someone when I can't even, this system isn't working, and maybe it's working the right ways in which we've wanted all along to be working, but yeah, and so I'm not sure criminalizing these people with their trauma and all these things is helping them really at all into housing, and so that's really hard at this moment to see, and so I'm really asking for some things, but another thing I'm asking for is I'm seeing an uptick of domestic violence, and it's getting bad because we don't have housing to put these women into and men that are experiencing domestic violence, and it's terrifying. And so I urge you to fund violence prevention, to rebuild these communities, and to look out for these women and men who are experiencing domestic violence. Fund Southside Harm Reduction. They do great work, amazing work within the community. I ask you to deeply fund and truly affordable housing, not Section 42, not all these things. We want to see people that can have housing and can have dignified housing, and that we can work with landlords to get them to work with us, you know. And I know that everyone has mental health issues, my family included, and so I want to make sure my family doesn't end up on the streets too, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. 87, Tony. Then Martin, Jason, Ashley.
Hey everyone, my name's Tony. I live in the Whittier neighborhood. I want to talk tonight about climate change. So we all know that our climate is changing. We all know that there are going to be increasing crises on the coast and in more southern parts of the country. We also know, interestingly enough, that we're in one of the places that's going to be the most resilient to climate change, right? That means a lot of people are going to be coming here. A lot of people are going to be coming here. And we already are in the middle of a housing crisis, right? We already know we're not building enough affordable housing to keep up with economically affluent people who are moving here, right? Or the climate migrants that are already on their way here, right? And already here in some cases. And so I want you to think really deeply about, we maybe have 10 years, maybe have 30 years, maybe have 50 years before folks start showing up in massive numbers, right? Think about how bad the housing crises are in Seattle, in Portland, in New York, and then think about the fact, where are those folks going to go when the next mega hurricane hits, right? And how do we want to greet them when they get here? How are we prepared to deal with those mental health emergencies, with those housing emergencies, with the public safety crises that come from trying to cram way more people into this community that already doesn't have enough space or enough resources for the people that we have living here? So I encourage you to think really deeply as you're considering public safety about what kind of public safety infrastructure we want to build on the way there, and I would encourage you to do that outside of the police department. I support all of Reclaim the Block's demands. I'm sure that doesn't come as a surprise, but as a member of the 911 MPD work group, I would also say we have given you some really incredible recommendations, especially around taking mental health crisis out of the police department. That requires a $500,000 one-time investment for a pilot to try it out, co-response within the fire department, and build a model that's going to last us for many decades. So I really hope that you'll take that seriously and that you're going to think about the downstream and historical effects of the choices that we're making right now. Thank you.
Thank you. 88, Martin. Then Jason and Ashley.
Hey there, my name is Martin. I'm from the Whittier neighborhood. I'm here tonight in support of Reclaim the Block and their demand that our city prioritize real needs over increased policing. Those demands come from a very real understanding of the impact that 150 years of history of policing has had on our community. In all those years, the police have yet to serve the needs of this city in a meaningful way. Look around. You've got a growing housing crisis, drug addiction problems, challenges with mental health, and everything else that all of the other community members before me tonight have brought up. This city has real needs, and there are people here ready to offer real solutions. I urge you to prioritize working with them instead of a police department with a history of criminalizing, traumatizing, and at best ignoring the community you serve. Thank you.
Thank you. 89, Jason. Anyone can always come back. 90, Ashley.
Hello. I just want to take a moment to make sure that we're all aware of what we're feeling in our bodies. So I'm going to take a moment, but I encourage you all as well, because this has been a long meeting. So if you're feeling that you're numbing out, if you're feeling that you're getting tired, then recognize that and see if that's how you want to show up right now. And feel free to check your breathing. Are you taking shallow breaths? Are you holding your breath? Are you taking deep breaths? So let's just do that together. I also really want to recognize how the energy shifted when we all had some humor in the room. When that individual had a moment where they had to catch what they were about to say, we all had a laugh together, and that felt really good in this room, and the energy did shift. I know that I felt the energy shift. So I want to just name that that's what it's like when we're here doing this work together. That's what community feels like. So it's not a divide of you all against us. It's not a divide of people in power making decisions against the community and being isolated from the community. Let's take that moment and remember that laugh together and what that felt like, and have that be an image of how we want to work together. I also want to take note, if people are watching in the overflow rooms, that the mayor has been gone for over about 15 speakers, and I don't know if he's coming back or not, but let's just name his absence, and let's name what privileges happen when you can be absent if this meeting is going long and he has other obligations. So let's name that. I want to give an example and another image of what I'm seeing happening and how I see police response in our community. So recently, a lot of homeless camps have popped up on the Midtown Greenway, which really mirrors what happened last year on the Franklin Hiawatha encampment. And I wanted to say that police are asking people just to move along. You can't be here. It's getting cold. And they're throwing away their belongings. That's the police response. Imagine what the community response could be with affordable housing, shelter, basic needs support, mental health support, addiction support, etc. I am in support of Reclaim the Block. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Speaker 91, Tasia. Feel free to come back if you're still here. Speaker, so a lot of people I think went earlier or have left. So we have 97, Katie. Then 98, Julia. 109, Alice. And if I called anyone and you're just coming back in, we'll invite anyone up, or anyone else who wants to speak. This is our last signed in person. Yeah.
Do I need to state my name for the record or anything? Okay, Alice Madden.
I got you.
Thank you for this time to listen to everyone who was present, who called, who wrote in. Thank you for holding 3 meetings again this year instead of 2. I wanted to just reiterate kind of the skepticism about MPD's ability to perform the functions. I understand that they're outreach workers. I understand that they're meant to be investigating sexual assault crimes, but this is not the right messenger for that, and it's been proven over and over again. There are well-funded groups or experienced groups who can take on that work, and the work will be more expensive and slower if we use an untrusted partner who has a risk of injuring and killing people. I also want to support the trans equity roles. Those 2 positions have been really critical and important, and want to allow that work to continue. Then I just also want to say thank you for the climate emergency declaration on Monday. This is a compass, not a tangible anything yet. And I want to use that to kind of steer us where we're going now. As the EVAC, the Energy Vision Advisory Letter mentioned, there's $590,000 or about $500,000 missing from the climate budget. And that doesn't reflect that we're in an emergency. That says this issue has been deprioritized, this issue we're doing enough, or we can afford to wait to do more next year. And climate is multiplicative. The longer we wait, the more things happen to escalate the situation we're in. And I just want to call out that there are so many people fighting against pipeline infrastructure. This is a flashpoint in the Midwest with Line 3 and Line 5. And if we don't have alternatives ready to go that are accessible to people, when that stuff is done, we're going to de facto into Xcel's fracked gas plants and 15% price increases. So please restore that funding and multiply it.
Thank you. Speaker 97, Katie.
Hi, my name is KT and I use she, her pronouns. I live in the Phillips West neighborhood in Ward 6. I'm here today in support of Reclaim the Block because I want Minneapolis to invest in real safety by funding community-oriented solutions rather than funding more cops. I'm a shelter worker at Our Savers Housing, and when I'm the only staff present on my overnight shift and a resident is experiencing a mental health crisis, I'm worried about the welfare of the residents if I call the cops. When I call a service provided by Hennepin County called Community Outreach for Psychiatric Emergencies, or COPE, a service I know and trust from experience, they take on average an hour to respond due to their limited funding. But that is what a resident in mental health crisis needs, a mental health response team, not police. In Hennepin County, as nationwide, people of color are disproportionately affected by houselessness. So when I consider the option of calling the cops, I worry how this might traumatically impact the other residents. The majority of them, people of color, whose communities have suffered violence and dehumanization at the hands of the police, and are likely to feel unsafe with the police presence. I think of the resident experiencing the mental health crisis, who is likely a person of color, who is much more likely to experience brutality at the hands of the police. I'm sure I'm not the first to say this today, but I'll say it again. Non-police models in other cities have been successful and have reduced demand on police to respond by 17%. There are alternatives out there. In fact, they already exist here. Let's fund them instead so that they can have the resources to do the work that we know is effective. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 110, Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane, and I am a resident of Phillips West, and I'm a pre-K and kindergarten teacher. I'm here just as a community member with no specific organization, but I stand in solidarity with those who have spoken from Reclaim the Block, Southside Harm Reduction Services, and Save Tool. Working in the childhood development field, I see how children from families who have experienced incarceration, drug and mental health issues, and have unstable housing are immediately at a disadvantage to their peers. Their trauma and instability puts them at an immediate disadvantage. These are 3- and 4-year-olds that I work with who can be labeled as disciplinary problems due to the trauma or instability that they experience, and this is a label that will follow them for the rest of their education and likely for their entire lives. Many of these children live in highly policed neighborhoods already, will go on to attend heavily policed schools, and research shows that this police presence will only continue their path to criminalization. The police presence in the neighborhood I work in is already large, and it has a direct impact on the children. For the sake of safety, the staff move the children inside whenever there are police cars or active sirens in the area. The children are all very shaken up by these experiences. They happen on a somewhat regular basis. Many of the children start crying, and I have to wonder about the trauma that this will cause. I beg you, for the sake of the next generation, to continue to consider the appeals to fund the community and not cops, or else we're going to be having the same conversation later when the children of traumatized individuals are growing up in a police state. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker who had signed in. If anyone else wants to speak, you can come on up. I'll ask a couple times, just catch everyone.
Mayor, council members, I've been sitting for a long time. I was not aware of your procedure of signing the list. I was patiently waiting, and I was well informed of what you deal with. What I wanted to deal with is because I am a property owner in Minneapolis, and it gave me a note. This was an appropriate medium for tax concerns. And right now, I own a piece of land down in the Bassett Creek area, and they are suggesting to raise my percentage change 43% above what it was last year. Now, I know there are a lot of problems as far as budgets are concerned, but I don't think this is a way to raise the funds on a private piece of land. And now there's no building there on the land at all. So if they increase the taxes 43%, imagine what that is for when there is some construction or land or development there, be half of the value of the property. That I think is not economically feasible. So that's why I'm here, council, and so I would like to have this piece of property really looked at. The taxes are unreasonable. So I'm here for a reduction, and maybe this isn't the appropriate meeting for that, but I was.
Yeah, thank you.
This was the address I had.
Thank you, sir, for being here. Are Our assessor, I think, had to leave. He was here earlier, but if you leave your contact information with the clerk, we can have him follow up with you and or your council member. And this is absolutely the appropriate place to talk about that. So we're happy to follow up. There's a process to appeal the assessment, and we can get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, thanks. Sure.
Excuse me, I just want to acknowledge, you didn't state your name for the record, but Mr. Carl Eller is Hall of Fame Minnesota Viking, and just want to acknowledge your presence being here.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Carl, and I know Councilwoman Jenkins has very graciously made that. And again, I was really impressed with the job that you do, and thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for being so patient tonight, too. Would anyone else like to speak? No problem.
Hello, Council. My name is Jaehyun Shim. I live in the 9th Ward, and I'm here in support of Reclaim the Block and the Trans Equity Council and their ask for 2 full-time staff members. You've heard a lot of people come up here and speak to safety in our community, people who are for the police and people who aren't. And I think that we know in our community here that our council members have worked really hard for us in the past. And you've found money from places in the budget that have seemed uncontroversial in the past when it's something that's really mattered. 2 years ago, I got to come here as a board member from Domestic Abuse Project, and thank you for moving $150,000 our way. It came out of a traffic light fund. This year, I'm asking that you take a bold move, and instead of finding uncontroversial money, you take money that really matters, that really hasn't been doing things productive in the spaces it's been, and reinvest it into our communities in ways that you know will make a difference. We elected you in as progressive members, and we expect to see that. And we expect that to be happening now, not when you're getting ready for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hello, I'm Chef. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm here with Reclaim the Block and to support 2 full-time paid staff to do trans equity work at the city. A lot of folks have already spoken to my values, so I won't say too much, but I want to say for myself, I don't call the police on principle because I don't want to escalate, punish, wound, or kill anyone in my community. When I had credit cards taken this year and 2 of my bikes were stolen, I didn't want a police force to criminalize anyone. I wanted our communities to have what they needed. I wanted people to be paid full wages at their jobs, and I wanted safe homes for people to go home to at night. For the trans equity funding, I'm grateful for the work that the council has done so far to start to create a position at the city to do trans equity work, and I've been excited to see what's happened so far with the Trans Equity Summit this year being the biggest and most accessible and most community-based so far. That said, we need more paid staff to do that work. We know that trans communities are still seeing huge disparities in job place discrimination, in housing, and as a member of that community who's not the most impacted, it still hurts to see us not fully represented and have dollars put to you in that way when we know it's powerful work. So I want to see that grow, and thank you for what's been done so far.
Thank you. And if you didn't sign in and spoke, please check in with the clerk. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Mary Souter. I live at 4808 31st Avenue South. So I am not for more funding for cops. I just have to get that out there. I'm also a member of the Racial Justice Network. And I have to point out my observation that tonight, out of all of 100 and some people who have spoken, I noticed unless something different happened when I went to the bathroom once, that the only person who was interrupted for going over time was a Black woman. And I need to just let you know that, Lisa, from one white woman to another, that's something we have to be aware of. And I think that's an indication of our inherent beliefs that white voices and white lives are more valuable than Black lives. And I hope that can be held in everybody's mind as you move forward with decision making. If you're for everybody, you have to be for everybody.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else? Last call. I will close the public hearing. And at this time, I want to thank everyone who took the time to speak today, especially folks who waited to the end, and all of the effort that has gone in, I think, before today. Before we adjourn, we have two more items. First, I'd like to invite Councilmember Palmisano to give us an update on the remaining timeline associated with the budget process. And then Councilmember Warsame has asked for a moment of silence for some particular tragedies that have happened in the community recently. So we'll first turn it over to Chair Palmisano to talk about the budget process.
Thank you, Madam President. The Budget Committee will conduct a markup session on the recommended budget this Friday, December 6th, beginning at 10 a.m. in this chamber, as some speakers mentioned. At that time, council members will have the opportunity to receive responses or follow-up information on questions that were raised during the departmental hearings we completed, as well as the chance to bring forward any amendments. That markup session is open to the public, and it will be broadcast on the city's TV channel and also streamed live from the city website. As in prior years, I anticipate bringing a package of technical amendments to the markup session on Friday. This will be the first set of amendments to the base budget as proposed by Mayor Fry. We will then take up for consideration further amendments that council members have at that time. The final budget package, which will include the recommended budget submitted by Mayor Fry, together with amendments from council members during Friday's markup session, will then be submitted to the full City Council for a final public hearing next Wednesday, December 11th at 6:05 in this chamber. Following the conclusion of that public hearing, the full council will take final action on the proposed 2020 budget.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilmember Palmisano. And thank you for all that you have done with the Budget Committee. It's been a process of presentations and the hearing before today. So then before we adjourn with a motion to adjourn, I do want to just pause and acknowledge that there was a terrible fire in the 6th Ward, which led to several deaths and injuries, as well as two very tragic domestic violence events in our community that led to partner deaths and, in one case, children as well. And I know we have a lot of we heard tonight a lot of issues around, folks who lost their life from overdoses, from traffic crashes and fatalities. So I think we could, I would invite everyone to just include anyone else you'd like to keep in your thoughts and honor a moment of silence for the victims of those three tragedies, but then all of the other things that have happened in our community for which I think we share responsibility to prevent in the future. Thank you. Thank you for taking that time. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. That's a motion to adjourn this meeting to the next, which is on Wednesday, December 11th at 6:05 p.m., 1 week from tonight, for the final public hearing on the recommended 2020 budget. Again, that will follow the action. That will follow Friday's actions. You'll be able to comment on them, and then at that meeting next Wednesday, we will take formal action to adopt a budget. So I'll entertain a motion for that. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. That carries, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.